Okay, it's 7 o'clock. We're starting the meeting of the San Leandro City Council. Today is Monday, May 20th. It is 7 p.m. and I'm calling the meeting to order. I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this point, Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Yes. Councilmember Aguilar.
Present.
Councilmember Azevedo.
Present.
Councilmember Baloo.
Present.
Councilmember Bowen.
Present.
Councilmember Viveros Walton.
Present.
Vice Mayor Simon.
Present.
Mayor Gonzalez.
Present. At this point in time, we're going to take an announcement from Councilmember Azevedo.
Under California Government Code Section 54953 F2AI, I'm notifying the council of my need to participate in tonight's meeting remotely for just cause because of a family member need. Thank you.
Thank you for your announcement. And just for the benefit of the public, that sort of item does not require a vote. Second announcement, item 13A will not be heard tonight. And that's because we have had someone who's going to be previously appointed to commission will be moved to another commission appointment, and someone else is being brought in. So as we work through the logistics of that, that will be postponed until the June 3rd meeting. And the third announcement is that you will notice that we have once again kind of reordered. Last year, the folks were laid out from District 6 all the way down to 1, and now they're 1 going all the way down to 6. And just to be clear, I have discussed this with council members already. So, Madam Clerk, your announcement next, please.
If you would like to make a public comment during the meeting, you can do so in person or via Zoom. If you are present at the meeting, please complete a speaker card and submit it to the city clerk before the item is presented. If you wish to participate in public comment via Zoom, you can use the raise your hand tool when the item is called. During the public comment session, speakers will be invited to speak and will have a set time to share their comments. A countdown timer will appear for their convenience, and when the time is up, the microphone will be muted. All raised hands outside of public comment will be lowered to avoid confusion. Once public comment is opened, hands may be raised to speak.
Moving through our agenda, item number 3, there are no specific recognitions today. We'll move to our consent calendar. Are there any amendments to the consent calendar? Councilmember Viveros Walton.
Move the consent calendar.
So I've got a motion from Councilmember Viveros Walton to move the consent calendar. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I've got a second from Councilmember Aguilar. At this point in time, we will take public comment on this item, our consent calendar.
Mr. Mayor, there is one public comment online
And none in person.
and none in person.
Thank you. Let's go online, please.
IT, can you get the online timer ready? Douglas Spalding, you may unmute yourself.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. I wanted to discuss item 5D concerning the SLCEA salary scale. I have no quibble about the amounts of anyone's salary. I'm not that knowledgeable about that kind of stuff, but I found it fascinating to read the list. These are essential jobs, essential workers in our city who perform a multitude of tasks that keep the city running. And what I guess the reason I wanted to speak is I found it interesting that aside from tree trimmers and park maintenance workers there's not really anybody doing any sustainability work, as I can tell. And I'm mindful of that since we have recently shown Dr. Mock the door, made them feel unwelcome enough that they sought employment elsewhere. And I just am awfully concerned that all of the important work that Dr. Mock has done is going to fall by the wayside. It doesn't seem like there's any infrastructure to keep it going. And I think as a city, we can say, oh, there's, Project 2050, and there's the Butterfly Garden, and there's Friends of San Leandro Creek, and all these other initiatives going, which is true, and all that volunteer work that people put into the city is really, really great. But it could be magnified many times if the city would simply coordinate some of the work going on. We could have many, many, many more gardens, for example, in town, if we had a garden manager who would be interested and willing to organize neighborhood gardening groups, and so on and so forth. So, while volunteerism is really a great thing, I also am a great believer in organization, and I believe that the SLCA job descriptions belie a situation where we're not really supporting that kind of work in our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, there's no more public comment.
Okay, thank you. At this point in time, I will close public comment. Had a brief dialogue up here with the city manager. Just for clarification for our record, the sustainability analyst position is in the management union, so it would not be captured here. Is there further discussion at this point in time? Seeing none, let's vote.
Councilmember Azevedo, your vote.
Aye.
All votes are in. Motion passes 7-0. Councilmember Azevedo, yes. Councilmember Viveros Walton, yes. Councilmember Aguilar, yes. Vice Mayor Simon, yes. Councilmember Bowen, yes. Councilmember Baloo, yes. And Mayor Gonzalez, yes.
Okay, item number 6, none were removed from the consent calendar. Going to closed session, action taken. There was no reportable action taken. There was robust discussion and questions made of the city team. So let's move to our city manager and city attorney reports, if we have any.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council, and members of the public. I am delighted to take a moment to highlight and celebrate an important event taking place this week, National Public Works Week. This annual observance, which runs from May 19th to May 25th, is dedicated to recognizing the essential contributions of our public works professionals who maintain and improve infrastructure and services that are vital to our community's health, safety, and quality of life. The theme this year is advancing quality of life for all. This theme shines a spotlight on the way public works professionals advance our quality of life, whether as a first responder to an electricity outage, graffiti abatement, or a myriad of other ways they silently serve our communities. Public works professionals advance the quality of life by providing services in engineering, public buildings and spaces, emergency management, and first response, solid waste, recycling and sustainability, regional coordination and collaboration, and so much more. They are what make our communities dynamic places to live and work. Join us in celebrating the quiet work these professionals do that make life better for all of us.
So just tacking on to that, I know that we have a proclamation that we will be issuing tomorrow. And so that will happen at the Corp Yard. So one of the things that we are cognizant of or sensitive to is making employees stay late after work and come here and stand for just a few minutes. So instead, spend more time trying to go and meet people at their location during their normal day, so that they don't have to come out after hours for our convenience. Speaking with City Attorney Pierotta, does not sound like there is a city attorney report. And so we will move on to public comment.
Mr. Mayor, we have 4 public comments in person. It looks like a couple online.
Okay, so I'm going to hold on just a second. want to see how many we have online as I determine how much time to allocate. So if you are online and you would like to speak today, please raise your hand. Okay, so I see 5 hands online. This is the last call. If you are going to speak and you are an online public commenter, please raise your hand. Okay, so with that in mind, what we are going to do is we're going to go online first for these 5 people. The 5 people are someone labeled Jesse, Jeannie, Douglas, Healy, and Leo. Those will be the 5 online, and then we will come to the cards in person.
Okay. Jesse, you may unmute yourself.
Hi, just a point of clarification. Are we giving public comment at this point for all items in the agenda, or
This is simply for items that are not on the agenda.
forgive me, I don't want to give public comment at this time. Thank you.
Well, no worries. We'll come back to you.
Ginny Madsen, you may unmute yourself.
Thank you. So, Ginny Madsen, and I got on just in time to hear Ms. Robustelli good words about the proclamation that you're issuing, because I truly believe that the real outreach of the city that has done so much and really gotten a lot of involvement has come out of the Public Works Department. I'm thinking back to disaster meetings and back in 2013. I mean, it goes back. It's a long history, and it is very much because of the sustainability group that a lot of good stuff has come, a lot of good opinion has come to San Leandro from outside the city, but I know it makes a difference in the city. So thank you, and I'm hoping I can make it tomorrow for this proclamation. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug Spalding, you may unmute yourself.
Thank you so much. Not to belabor the point, but you know, when we look at Public Works, truly the heroes of our city, that's a big department with a manager, Sheila Marquises, and she's on the management salary scale. But there's a lot of people that work in that department who don't, who are the certified employees. And really, that's exactly my point you're making for me, Mayor, which is that we expected Dr. Mock to do everything, to get the grant, to implement the grant, to dig the holes, to plant the trees, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours. And unfortunately, the sustainability manager position was unsustainable. And if we truly value sustainability, then what we would do is we would support that with a lot of positions, not just one position. That's one thing. Second thing is, I found it curious when I made public comments at the last meeting that then Councilmember Baloo tried to up the ante by saying the police are 60% of the budget. Let's raise that 10% to 70% of the budget. So, that aside, I thought that you all weren't supposed to comment on the public comments. I find it curious that Councilmember Baloo often does follow up, but I'll take his answer off the air. But I did want to give a prop to Ms. Grego. I saw the item about your successful Chamber of Commerce event at the Memorial Building, and it reminded me that years and years ago that was a residence for militaries during World War II. I know because they came and they ate at my grandfather's lunch counter at Sunkist Market, and then at night they would come up and they would were stationed and did the spotlight up on the hill in Old Bayo Vista. And that building could be turned into a residence again. I think the city should partner with the Alameda County and see that as a next navigation center. So what do you think, Tom Liao? The Memorial Building as a residence and support center for unhoused people.
Thank you. Your time is up. Healy, you may unmute yourself.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Healy. I'm the program manager for Earth Team, a nonprofit based in Richmond that works with high school students across the East Bay, working on environmental leadership and sustainability issues. We employ high school students from various different schools to tackle our climate crisis and be the voices and leaders in their community. We currently employ a total of 46 students from San Lorenzo, Royal, and Castro Valley High School as interns in our program. When discussing our project on air pollution, it is astounding to know that these students have noticed these issues too, especially living in San Lorenzo, San Leandro, and the like. We have partnered with the Bay Area Air Quality Management District to conduct an action project based in certain areas like San Leandro, who have a score of 80 and above on the Calum viral screen tool. And to show a correlation between asthma incidents with areas that have that score. The other part of our project is to have an exposure reduction strategy that would reach about 5,000 students from various different high schools. We're working to work with San Leandro High School in addition to that in our phase 3 of our grant process to help make it huge or larger impact on our community. We tabled at the Bay Fair Farmers Market numerous times and showcased our brochures and booklets that our students personally made. And many of the residents have too long for a chance to change their air quality in their neighborhood. Other times we have heard residents saying they do not know where to start. Our interns have given these residents the tools and knowledge to better their own situation at home and how they can be involved to make a better change in their own city. Not only that, we have created a campaign on their campuses to alleviate air quality on their campuses by lessening individual car transportation commute to and from school. We reduced it from 75.2 to 69.8. It is a small sliver of change, but it's already a change that's gaining traction on their respective campuses. We hope to bring changes on different high school campuses like San Leandro as well. We welcome the city council members and Mayor Gonzalez to work with the public to address the air quality in San Leandro. I also welcome and invite the city council members and Mayor Gonzalez to a presentation created by our own interns to present to you all on the data and everything that we've learned so far this year and their passion and change for the community at a later date. Thank you.
Thank you. Leo, you may unmute yourself.
Yes, this city council is in the business of rewarding criminal activity. Through the San Leandro Times, we learned that some 4 million have been paid to some nut, another million to a junkie, and millions have already been spent to build a monument to another criminal, not to mention the lawyers, planning, artists, etc. No wonder San Leandrans pay the higher taxes in the county. Meanwhile, criminals parade on East 14. The restaurant on East 14 and Broadmoor had 4 windows shattered in February by vandals. The Broadmoor Plaza senior facility has been robbed twice by thieves breaking in. A front window of that facility was also shattered. Gangs of bikers do wheelings along East 14th, including in front of the police department. Others ride on the sidewalk. Bums sleep in front of business doors at night and harass customers during the day. Clean East 14 is the Democrat politically correct policy with a win from Newsom and Pamela Price. It also says something about the kind of neighbors we have, the ones who elected you. Remember in November.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, there's no more public comment in person, or I mean online.
So with that, I will close online public comment and bring it into the room.
Okay. Cynthia Prieto Diaz.
Ready? Okay, thank you. Dear Council and San Leandro leadership, apologies, I have to read. I am Cynthia Prieto Diaz, an at-large Alameda County Public Health Commissioner, but most importantly, I come before you as a resident here in San Leandro, doing my best to advance environmental justice in our city and our greater San Francisco Bay Area region. I want to encourage the city of San Leandro to prioritize sustainability and climate action to deliver on its goals of increasing economic opportunities to support infrastructure, which can also help address housing concerns, and support individuals experiencing homelessness, all forms of homelessness, which could concurrently promote public safety by prioritizing climate action initiatives and the efforts of the Office of Sustainability. As a city, we may also advance a safe and healthy environment for all. We have the opportunity to tap into local talent that could serve as a workforce in clean tech and a green economy that can have a plethora of benefits for the city. Happy to see this as a future agenda item to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you. Johnny Dykesel.
Good evening, board members. I live on St. Mary's Avenue since 1984. And my concern is we had a nice, quiet neighborhood. We no longer have that. We have a bully at the end of the block, which is causing problems. My biggest concern is we have 6 children under 10 years old. I personally have 5 grandchildren under 10 years old. And this is not the Indy 500 on this small block. It's a dead-end street. It's very quiet typically, except for this one person who's having a problem. I don't want to go into detail, but Lieutenant Ward and Ms. Bowen, we were in a meeting with the sound of our street addressing the issue. We're thinking about doing a restraining order. I know that nothing can be done until then, but I just want to bring it to I just have a gut feeling something's going to go wrong, and I hate to see that happen, especially with children. That's all I have to say. Thank you for your time, and God bless you all.
Thank you. Mike Katzlakabe.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of City Council, staff, and public. Going a little bit of a history lesson here. Back in January 2014, the police department came to the City Council to support its acquisition of body-worn cameras. The claim was that it would reduce complaints against the police department as a result of the decreased use of force by police. Obviously, this would result in fewer legal settlements that would cost the city millions of dollars. However, in order to proceed with the implementation of body cameras, the police union negotiated that the turning on of the body camera was subject to the discretion of the officer. At the time, I was supportive and perhaps a bit naive. In June 2019, when the body camera contract came up for renewal, I provided data to this council on the use of force, suspecting that neither the police nor the city staff would do so, and they did not. The data showed that use of force by San Leandro police had actually increased since body-worn cameras had been implemented 5 years earlier, and that was from data provided by the San Leandro police. So why am I bringing this up now? Because at a recent meeting, some concern was expressed about possible lawsuits resulting from injuries associated with public art. That was ironic because the city has recently paid out nearly $5 million for actions by San Leandro police personnel. There was a $3.9 million settlement paid out for the beating and tasing of a disabled man. There was a nearly $1 million payout for the beating of a man that caused head injuries. It seems like there should be more concern about lawsuits from the actions of San Leandro police than because of public art. At least we should be asking, why haven't body cameras been effective in reducing the use of force and therefore $1 million settlements? Why didn't body cameras help protect people who interact with police like Anthony Gomez, Stipe Sykes, Sorrell Shiflett, and Stephen Taylor? Is it related to the police having complete control of the storage, disposition, and review of body camera footage? Is it the lack of accountability? This seems worthy of time and effort if there is truly concern about lawsuits affecting the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Karen Fernandez.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for listening and hearing me today. I am Karen Fernandez. I'm the Executive Director of the Community Action Council. And I want to talk about crime, of course. It's increasing. And when I'm talking to residents, they're not feeling safe because there's a lot of petty crime going on that is not being dealt with. So did you know that there was an 18-year-old that was able to purchase gummies with psychedelic mushrooms in them at a smoke shop here in San Leandro? According to the California SB 1012, It states that the only legal use of psychedelic mushrooms are people who are over 21 and only under the supervision of a licensed therapeutic facilitator. Did you know that in the parking lot that a dispute between two people, one person was angry without being provoked, they were threatened to be beaten, then they had the car aimed at them, barely missing them. They were followed into the store where they were continued to be verbally assaulted in front of the security. And when the police came, the victim was told it was considered a heated dispute and nothing would be done. Did you know that the Rite Aid on Grand Avenue gets robbed daily? One instance is the thieves ran out, found their car was dead, was asking everyone for a jump. Only when the cops arrived, they tried to jump the car, but they couldn't. So they pushed the car to the side and no one was arrested despite witnesses being there and asking to be heard. Did you know that the pizza parlor next to the same Rite Aid has been robbed 3 times? First with pepper spray, second with a gun, then a smash and grab after hours. I asked council members and the mayor
Your
to
time
please
is up.
help me to partner with the crime and prevention.
Karina Lopez?
Good evening. I was just letting you know that I have some, grave concerns about what's happening over at St. Verde Park, and I know we had an escalation. I'd be so grateful. I know often things can't be reported out immediately because of, people being at large. But when there is the opportunity, I did try to ask these questions about it. But unfortunately, I think there's a link broken on the city's website, or it could be user error. But really, the real reason I'm actually up here today is I wanted to have something positive to share, because I feel like that the tone, unfortunately, has become quite negative, in the city on the performance of our public officials, which I think I really greatly admire all of you for all of your work, because I know I've been in your hot seat there too. Specifically this evening, I wanted to thank Councilmember Aguilar for your service, and I wanted to congratulate you for getting into a really esteemed program and getting a full scholarship for that. I know that you've also gotten a partial scholarship for a program that I participated in a number of years ago that I think will also be really additive to your role as a council member. And I'm really sorry that there are people in the public that are attacking you for being openly gay. I think that's really terrible. I became aware of it today. I saw that on social media. And so I hope that the city of San Leandro will take a good look at some of the social media platforms that it uses and doesn't, give power to some of the platforms that do allow hate speech and so forth of our public officials based on their personal choices. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, there's no more public comment.
So at this point in time, we will close public comment. I think for a variety of the points that were raised by public commenters, I think we individually would appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, because I think we do have some information, but I want to make sure that we're kind of organized in how we respond. So please do reach out to us after at the next break. For item number 10, we're going to have a number of public hearings today. I'd like to start with the first public hearing, which is item 10A, which is adopting 2 resolutions. That first resolution is that it would be a finding that a majority protest does not exist, and correspondingly directing a property owner ballot proceeding the city stormwater fee amendment, and directing the city manager to vote yes for the city of San Leandro owned parcels. And secondly, directing the city of San Leandro the city manager to vote yes for the San Leandro Parking Authority owned parcels. To begin this process, we will have a staff presentation from Cynthia Battenberg, Special Projects Consultant.
Thank you for that. Good evening, Mayor and Council Member. I'm Cynthia Battenberg, and I'm here with Rick Simonson, a Vice Principal of HF&H. This is the fourth time that we're speaking to you regarding the Prop 218 process for stormwater fees. Tonight's overview is before you. Today we'll also, in addition to reviewing some of the information that we've discussed in the past, we'll be going over some of the outreach, the ballot and ballot process, city-owned parcels, and then recommendations. So as you are all aware, the city is proposing an amendment to our stormwater fee that will replace the current fee because additional funding is needed. The current fee was adopted over 30 years ago. It's approximately $26 per household. It has not increased in 30 years, and understandably, its buying value has decreased. We need funding to remove trash and pollutants from the stormwater and meet clean water requirements. We have significant repair and maintenance costs to our pipes and our pump stations and our outlets, outfalls. And we also have over $32 million worth of very high and high priority capital improvement projects that need to be addressed. This chart reviews the current fees, which are in the fourth column on the right, labeled D. And as you can see, we have drilled down a little bit into some of the impacts and the fair share for each parcel. So as opposed to just having a flat fee of $26.33 per residential parcel, we have a rate for small parcels, medium, and large parcels. The majority of the parcels are between 3,200 and 7,200 square feet, and their rate would just about double from to $49.92 a year. That's annually, and that increase is equal to $197 a month. So unfortunately, not even a cup of coffee anymore. As you can see by the non-single family rates, there are some categories that were previously exempt. These were nonprofits. The Nexus requires that all properties are now shared. So we'll be talking a little bit about the city parcels later. They are assessed based on the type of parcel they are. And for example, with the schools, we went through and looked at every single parcel to determine how much permeability there was. I already reviewed, we passed our current fee 30 years ago. It generates 1.1 million annually. And the proposed amended fee is looking to generate an additional 2.1 annually. The council over the past year has approved funding for quite a few studies that were necessary to determine what our future needs were, as well as look at rate setting methodologies, and also for assistance, consultants to assist with the Prop 218 process. In April, you voted to initiate the process and notice tonight's public hearing. And on April 5th, we mailed a notice of the public hearing to all 25,000 property owners subject to the proposed fee. Since that time, we have continued to update the stormwater fee webpage. There have been social media posts. Mayor Gonzalez has put together a video message for the community. There have been individual briefings with stakeholder groups, including some of the large property owners, the school districts, the Chamber of Commerce. Information was distributed at the City Services Open House last month. And again, that notice of the public hearing, which was pretty informative, 11 by 17 handout was mailed to all property owners. And staff has been responding to calls and emails and providing individuals specific information. So tonight, assuming that there is not that 50% of the 24,970 parcels don't protest. And at this point in time, we're at 57 parcels, which is 0.002%. So I don't think we're going to get to 50%. So assuming that doesn't happen, then the next step is to mail out the ballot. Wanted to give you some information and thank you for your input at last meeting. That was very useful. The ballot will, be very clearly state and red official ballot enclosed. It has a funding guide, a ballot guide, which explains the reason for the fee, the current needs, the proposed rates, the deadline, how to vote, and then it will have a significant Spanish and simple Chinese translations. The ballot here on the right, you can see on the bottom of the ballot, it will have the address, the parcel number, the current fee, and the proposed fee. So they'll be able to have specific information about what they're voting for. And then it includes a postage paid return address envelope. They'll have 45 days to return the ballot. They're scheduled to be mailed on the 24th, should you move forward with the process. They would be due to the city clerk by 5 p.m. No postmarks accepted on July 8th. The tabulation process is done in an open setting on July 9th, starting at 9 a.m. It'll be in the city manager's large conference room. And those results, as well as should it pass, a consideration of adopting the fees will be brought to the July 15th meeting. Again, to review, the way that it works is if a majority of the ballots received and the votes are in favor of the fee, then it passes. And if the majority are against it, it does not pass. So I'm not sure how many ballots will be returned, but we're sending out, like I said, about 25,000. So tonight we have information for you on the city-owned parcels because again, the fee must be based on the fair share contribution and no property owners are exempt. We did a pretty exhaustive review of the city's parcels. We actually own 162 parcels. The list is included in your packet. And the fee that would be required for those parcels would be $44,198 next fiscal year. Parking Authority also owns one parcel in the city. The city council serves as the parking authority. And that one parcel, their fee would be $2,734 next year. We recommend that you exercise your right to vote on the proposed fee amendment. And tonight we're recommending that you open the public hearing, take public comment, close the hearing. We will then provide the city clerk information or she'll share the tabulation of the protests. As I indicated, right now we're at 57, which includes the 11 that were received since the agenda packet was distributed. And if majority protest does not exist, then we recommend that you pass the two resolutions that are before you this evening. Thank you, and we're here to take questions.
At this point in time, we will take questions from council members, and then I will move to open the public hearing. So first I'll go to Councilmember Baloo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quick question. Maybe I might have to lean on the city attorney for this. Can you go back to slide 7 for 1 second? And thank you, Cynthia, for that presentation. I always appreciate your ability to get everything done quickly, efficiently, and cover everything. Ballots due to the clerk by 5 p.m., no postmark accepted. Could we find ourselves in a little tiny bit of a legal issue? I mean, I know it's probably not even going to be a close vote, but is it a problem if we don't have a postmark like the normal standard every other ballot ever done in Alameda County? Can someone make an issue of that to just prolong this? Maybe the city attorney can weigh in, or should we just amend it and have a postmark?
Thank you, Councilmember Baloo. It is not a requirement under Prop 218. I don't recommend that we do so, and I think we've discussed it as well, that we're just following exactly the Prop 218 procedure.
People can drop off their ballot in person. So if they find themselves on Monday going, oh man, I forgot to put it in the mail, just run down to City Hall and drop it off in the clerk's office, and it'll be counted as long as it's received by 5 p.m.
Really satisfied with the answer. I just wanted to ask because
Okay.
I know there's sometimes people out there looking for that little wrinkle to. So if we're
Right.
on solid ground, thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions, I will move to open the public hearing. It is 7:41. We have a public hearing on the stormwater fee that's being proposed under Proposition 218. Do you have any public commenters?
Mr. Mayor, I have 2 public commenters in person and none online.
Okay, so I'm turning online. Again, this is the request to go into queue so that we know how much time to allocate. Yeah, we'll give you 10 more seconds. And 10 seconds can seem like forever. Okay, so we do have a hand. Do we have any other hands online? A second hand has come in online. Do we have any other hands online? Okay, so at 7:42, we've waited for hands online. We will recognize 2 people online and then we will come into the room. That is Lucas and Joe.
Lucas, you may unmute yourself.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who worked on this effort. I am still very supportive of it. The last 2 times that I called in, I made a remote about the flyer needing to be updated so that people could see their current fee and the proposed fee change. And I'm very happy to see that you made that true on the ballot, and that the ballot will include the address, the parcel number, the current fee, and the proposed fee. This is exactly what I think was needed to make sure that the public is informed in what it's voting on. I really appreciate it. Thank you for taking my comment.
Thank you. Joe, you may unmute yourself. Joe, we cannot hear you.
Okay. Unfortunately, we're not able to hear you online. We don't know why. We heard our previous commenter just fine. We're going to give that one. Okay, hand went down. So at this time, I'm going to close the online comment and come to our room to hear in-person comment.
Charles, go.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council and staff and members of the public. My name is Charles Go. I live in Harlan Street in San Leandro, and I'm here to comment on this stormwater fee, not to poo-poo it, but I also instead would like to suggest a few things for the group to think about. One of the things, and thank you, by the way, for the ballot and the handout, because it was very informative in terms of where things were going. And to me, one of the things I would like to suggest or request the council to think about now or in the future is street cleaning, which is $780,000. That's like the biggest cost for this. How effective is that really in dealing with stormwater? Because in my personal experience, it comes once a month. It blows dust around. Our cars are parked in front, so many of the garbage is under the cars. Again, think about how effective is that, because that's the number one cost. We can think about other ways of doing that, such as fund neighborhood cleanups, like what Councilperson Azevedo does. Possibly the other thing is create incentives for rainwater capture, because the calculation is runoff from the house, right? Because I do rainwater capture. I think it's very simple and easy and would help with the stormwater issue. And then perhaps I'll just stop there. There's a couple of things that I think just wanted to share. Think about it, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Gregory?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm Michael Gregory. I live at 1648 Daniels Drive in San Leandro. I'm president, Friends of the San Leandro Creek, and I'm a proud parent of drain number 2435 of the Adopt a Drain program in San Leandro. So to your point about what can we do, we can all adopt a drain. But I'm speaking here on behalf of support for this, and I encourage you to continue with the support you've given us to date, and let's just bring this thing home and bring us current and get on to other things. And I can't speak for the fish or the river otters, but they thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, there is no more public comment.
Okay, it is 7:47 and I'm closing the public hearing. I think part of what happens during the public hearing is that we ascertain whether there are additional protests to be added to our 57. And according to my marks on the notes that I took, I don't hear formal protest. I'd like to confirm if that is the interpretation of the clerk.
That is correct, Mr. Mayor. They did support.
Okay, so at this point in time, then I'm going to turn to my council members to see if there's any other discussion that council members would like to engage in. Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion. I'd be happy to call on you. Yes?
I want to make sure that Councilmember Azevedo has no comments.
Sorry, thank you very much. Councilmember Azevedo, please. My apologies.
Yes, I wanted to move this item.
Okay, thank you. I've got a motion by Azevedo and Councilmember Aguilar.
I'll second.
I've got a second from Councilmember Aguilar on this agenda item. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, let's please vote. I'm sorry, before we vote, Councilmember Simon? You got a question, a comment, or what?
No.
Okay, so then we'll continue with our vote.
Okay, all votes are in. Councilmember Azevedo, your vote?
Aye.
All votes are in. Motion passes 7-0. Councilmember Azevedo, yes. Councilmember Aguilar, yes. Councilmember Baloo, yes. Councilmember Bowen, yes. Councilmember Viveros Walton, yes. Vice Mayor Simon, yes. And Mayor Gonzalez, yes.
So Councilmember Simon or Vice Mayor Simon, I just want to make sure that, are you in queue or is that a mispunch? No worries. No worries at all. Okay, so it's at this point in time, I'm going to move to item 10B on our agenda. And item 10B is a consideration for us as a council to adopt amendments to 3 existing ordinances to amend first various San Leandro Municipal Code sections providing for an annual rate adjustment, the 2024-2025 year of business license fees. Number 2, similarly for emergency medical services tax. And 3, similarly for the emergency communication system access tax. So again, we will have a presentation. We'll take questions. We'll open the public hearing and then proceed with council member discussion after closing the public hearing. So we begin with Finance Director Michael Yuen to introduce the consultant who's been guiding us on this project.
All right, thank
So
you.
Director Yuen, please carry the full burden.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you, for this particular item is the adjustment to business license fees, EMS tax, and emergency communication tax. Just to give you a little bit of a background on fees, they are for specific services that city staff provide, things such as recreational programming, facilities rental, and permits. Fees are intended to cover the actual costs of services rendered. And as you may recall, in March of 2021, the Budget Task Force recommended an update of fees, which commenced in a fee study commenced in December of 2022, which will be brought before you later this year. The results of that fee study with a new master fee schedule. However, these 3 particular fees fall outside of that. These 3 fees are ordinance driven. Their annual adjustments are set forth in the San Leandro Municipal Code, which requires the adjustment to be tied by the Consumer Price Index. So these proposed rates, should you approve them after a public hearing tonight, would be effective on July 1st of this year to coincide with the new fiscal year. So first, for business license fees, these are basically business licenses are permits that allow businesses to conduct business in San Leandro. And the fees are, the way these fees are calculated, or they are actually a flat annual fee or a base plus per unit fee, depending on the type of businesses that operate. And the proposal here is to increase these fees by 2.6%, consistent with CPIW as set forth in the Muni Code. The EMS tax is the Emergency Medical Services Tax. This supports providing emergency paramedic services in a timely manner. It is a tax that is collected with property taxes that the county collects it through their tax collector and then transmits this particular piece to the city. The way this is calculated is there is a tax benefit unit that is the base, and the number of units charged varies by property type. Here again, the proposal is to increase the benefit unit by 2.6%, consistent with CPIW. And then the final tax here is the emergency communications tax, otherwise known as the 911 tax. This basically supports the provision of emergency call processing in the city and dispatch. This tax is charged on telephone bills. So the telephone utility provider will charge this on a monthly basis. There's basically 3 tiers here. There's a single access line fee, a trunk line fee, and a super trunk line fee. And here, once again, the proposal is to increase them by 2.6%, consistent with the Muni Code to mirror CPIW. So the requested action here, Mayor and Council, is to hold a public hearing. Staff recommends increases to these 3 taxes consistent with the San Leandro Municipal Code. Happy to take any questions and comments you have.
Hey, council members, any questions at this time? Okay, seeing none, we will open the public hearing. I'm sorry. Perfect. So it is 7:54 and I'm opening the public hearing. We have public comment on this item.
Mr. Mayor, I have no public comment in person or online.
Okay, we'll give that just a second more. Okay, at 7:55, I'm closing the public hearing and bringing it back to council for discussion. Do we have any discussion on this item? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion. Councilmember Baloo.
I'll move the item, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Aguilar.
I'll second.
I've got a motion from Baloo and a second from Aguilar. Any interest in further discussion? Seeing none, let's vote.
Councilmember Azevedo, your vote.
Aye.
All votes are in. Motion passes 7-0. Councilmember Azevedo, yes. Councilmember Aguilar, yes. Councilmember Baloo, yes. Councilmember Bowen, yes. Councilmember Viveros Walton, yes. Vice Mayor Simon, yes. And Mayor Gonzalez, yes.
Okay, so at this point in time, we're going to move to item 10C on our agenda, and that's to adopt a resolution potentially to approve an amendment to the city master fee schedule related to wastewater discharge fees for the fiscal year 2024. Once again, we have Finance Director Mako Yuen who will be presenting.
Okay, thank you again, Mayor and council members. This particular item is the wastewater discharge fees for fiscal year 24-25. This first slide, once again, is a background on fees. They are for specific services. Again, there was a budget task force recommendation to study fees. We will bring that final study result forward in hopefully just a couple of months. These particular fees, though, once again, fall outside of that fee study. But a public hearing is required to take action on these fees. And should you approve the increase, they will be effective on July 1st of 2024 to coincide with the new fiscal year. So to give you a little bit of a background on what exactly these fees are. So these are wastewater discharge fees. And when you are dealing with water related utility fees, a Prop 218 study is required to determine whether revenues will be adequate to cover your costs. The important thing to keep in mind here is revenues should not exceed the actual cost of services. And back in 2019, the city commissioned a Prop 218 study for this particular topic. That 218 study recommended bringing the rates to various levels over the course of 5 years. Now, during that 5 years, various occurrences took place, namely a pandemic that resulted in project delays that have contributed to the fee implementation being delayed. So on the right side of this slide, you will see the results of the 2019 Prop 218 study. It showed in kind of the shaded area 5 fiscal years with recommendations for what the rates should be at the beginning of the 5 fiscal years. And you see fiscal year 23 circled in red right now, even though we are in fiscal year 24 with 6 weeks remaining in fiscal year 24. That's because the current rates are at the fiscal year 23 level. And the reason why that is because project delays and have led to lower costs, which have led to lower rate increases. So in this particular table, you will see that fiscal year 20, which was the first year after the 2019 Prop 218 study, the recommended increase was 3.5%, and staff brought forward a 3.5% proposed increase that council approved. But then you will see that in the subsequent fiscal years, what staff have brought forward, which was ultimately approved by council, have been lower than what the recommended increases were for each of those fiscal years. So in fiscal year 21, 9.5 was recommended, 4.9 was brought forward and approved. Fiscal year 22, 9.4% recommended, 7.2% was requested and approved. Fiscal year 23, 9.7% increase recommended, 7.9% brought forward and approved. And last year in fiscal year 24, 9.5% was recommended, 8.5% was requested and approved. So currently for fiscal year 25, there is no recommended increase because a new study is forthcoming. However, what the request is to bring the rates in line with what the Prop 218 study from 2019 suggested for fiscal year 24. So for fiscal year 25, staff are seeking the fiscal year 24 rates, which will be roughly about a 9% increase. There are some new costs that are driving this increased request. So as I mentioned earlier, some projects were delayed over the course of the last 5 years. A big piece of those projects was the planning and design for nutrient caps. That is a $2 million price tag that will begin in fiscal year 25. We are seeing a 348% increase in hypochlorite. That is a chemical used for water disinfection. The last time this was bidded out, it came in at 71 cents, and now it's going to be around $2.50. So quite a bit of an increase there. We are seeing a 48% increase in biosolids hauling, and we are estimating an increase in staffing costs of around $300,000. So those are all feeding into the need for this particular increase. So the recommendation for fiscal year 24-25 is to approve fee increases to be set at the fiscal year 23-24 levels, 1 year behind, simply moving this red box from fiscal year 23 to 24, but to be charged in fiscal year 25. So again, we're 1 year behind while staff commences a new Prop 218 study for future year rates. Happy to take any questions that you have. And we also have Hayes Morehouse, the water pollution control plant manager, here to answer any questions as well.
Okay, so at this point in time, we will move to council member questions before opening our public hearing. Okay, seeing no questions, it is 8:02, and I'm opening the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor, there's no public comment in person or online.
Okay, we will wait just a minute to make sure that everyone feels like they have the opportunity to speak their mind. Okay, having waited about 30 seconds, we'll close the public hearing. Okay, just thank you. As a reminder, we like to have those cards in before the item is heard, but as a courtesy, thank you for being present and sharing your perspective.
Thank you. Cynthia again. So I had some questions regarding to risk management. So for businesses that might have hazardous waste materials, if that's been considered as part of the fees or something to consider with wastewater as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so at this point in time, it is 8:03, and I will close the public hearing formally. But I think it's an interesting question, so I will start with city manager. Obviously, you can direct it as appropriate. Now, when we think about wastewater, and there's clearly risk exposure for people doing maybe illegal dumping into their waste sewers, right? How do we address that risk, right? How are we monitoring that risk? And I'm sure someone might be able to inform us.
Yes, Manager Hayes is much more an expert on that topic, so if you could help us out.
Get close to the mic, please. Thank you.
The wastewater fees generally don't include hazardous waste fees. Those are a different category of fee. There is included in the wastewater fee support for the pretreatment aspect, which is the regulatory arm of the wastewater division that makes sure that large dischargers are appropriately using the system. So there is some for making sure that hazardous materials are being put down the drain, but there's a whole other fee schedule for it.
Okay, so I'm going to follow up on that question. It is my understanding that there is monitoring at various location points in our system so that we're able to know, for example, whether a certain discharger is more likely associated with something that we see that we don't like to see in our sewers. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because I'm assuming that that's part of this monitoring process and part of this fee. Okay.
That monitoring is done by our pretreatment inspectors.
And so what would be an example of something that pretreatment inspection process, that monitoring process might detect?
They do checks. It depends on the business that they're regulating. Some businesses, if they are likely to have metals in their discharge, they're regulated for metals. Other businesses are regulated for things like pH, or some businesses are regulated based on the strength of the wastewater that they discharge and are billed appropriately based on that.
Thank you. I have other questions or follow-up discussion from my council members. Councilmember Simon, or Vice Mayor Simon, please.
Thank you. I'm very supportive of this. And I do have a question, however, on the 348% increase on the hypochlorite. And I understand chemical costs are going up. There's a couple questions. One is, has this been progressing to such a large increase over time, or did we just feel it this year? And what are we doing to prevent in the future these type of massive increases?
It's an interesting question. Pre-pandemic, I recall correctly, we paid about 71 cents per gallon. And this year's bid, it's bid every year through a consortium called the BACC, with the Bay Area Chemical Consortium. So we don't bid it directly. We work with many other users of chemicals in the water and wastewater sector to do a group bid. So we're paying the same price as all the other plants in the East Bay. And so we've bid it out via that process. And pre-pandemic, it was 71 cents. And then it's sort of the mid-pandemic, they just held the price and didn't do a bid for a year. And then sort of 21, I want to say, 22, we saw a big, like 100% increase. And then this last year it was closer to like 10, 15%. So it jumped and then is leveling off. Our understanding, I asked to look into this and asked them to confirm that there's no collusion or anything kind of between the companies that are doing bids. And they looked into it and discovered that it's sodium hypochlorite. It's what we use to disinfect the water. It turns out that the cost for chlorine has gone up because I think just the entire market has gone up. Even like my understanding that it's used to make some plastics, polyvinyl chloride, PVC, and so the PVC manufacturers are paying more, and like it costs more to make the sodium chloride. That's the best answer I've been able to have about it. But we don't have a lot of control over what the companies that charge. There's only a few companies that make this chemical. But I can say that we aren't paying more than other people around us. So pay the exact same price as other agencies in the East Bay, and then those prices are similar to basically in the entire Bay Area.
Okay.
Answer your question?
Do we bring it in by the truckload? Are there options to bring it in by rail to bring the price down? Have we looked at any transportation differences?
No, we can't bring it in by rail because it needs to actually get all the way to the plant. We don't have a rail option. It comes in 5,000 gallon truckloads. Get one approximately once a week. We don't have capacity to store more than what can come on a truck, so we wouldn't have the ability to change that.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for your questions. Any other questions, comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion. We've got a motion. Oh, well, I don't have a motion yet at all. So, Councilmember Aguilar, please. I'm sorry. So I'm getting an indication of something.
Councilmember Azevedo, maybe. I don't know if he has a comment or not.
His hand is not up.
Okay, so Councilmember Aguilar, coming to you.
So moved.
I've got a motion from Councilmember Aguilar. Councilmember Viveros Walton, please.
I second the motion.
I've got a motion from Councilmember Aguilar, a second from Councilmember Viveros Walton. Any further discussion? Seeing none, let's vote.
Councilmember Aguilar, your vote, please.
Azevedo.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Councilmember Azevedo.
Aye.
All votes are in. Motion passes 7-0. Councilmember Azevedo, yes. Councilmember Aguilar, yes. Councilmember Baloo, yes. Councilmember Bowen, yes. Councilmember Viveros Walton, yes. Vice Mayor Simon, yes. And Mayor Gonzalez, yes. Motion passes 7-0.
So at this point in time, we're going to move to item number 11, City Council calendar and announcements. Councilmember Bowen, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to speak to a few things. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get to my notes. Upcoming events, I wanted to remind the community that on May 28th at 5:30 to 7 o'clock at Semper Verde Park, we will be meeting to discuss public safety, obviously something that's very timely given public comments and things that have been happening in the community. It'll be an opportunity to meet our interim police chief Everett, as well as speak to our city manager and myself about issues related specifically to District 5, but also incidences that are happening across the city. And so I invite everybody, especially those in District 5, to attend. And if you have questions, please email me. I really encourage everybody to come. It's really going to be an opportunity to be heard and for us to share things that we were doing. I hear you, and I want to make sure that we as a council can take action on the things that are really important to you. Then I want to speak to some of the concerns that I'm hearing about in the community. We had a police report come out today speaking to what happened at the Safeway just down the street from my home. And this is something that I've been hearing a lot from the community about. And one of the things that often comes up in conversation is specifically talking to what is happening with our youth and programming, especially the gaps for teen programming. And the reason I bring this up is when we want to address things that are happening in the community, I think it's incredibly important for us to think about root causes and take a really holistic approach towards that. And so I want people in the community who are concerned to continue to reach out, and so we can continue to have these conversations. I've been getting a lot of emails from some recent sideshows and bike caravans that are really concerning for residents. And I want to speak to what former Councilmember Lopez asked about. She had emailed asking about what had happened at Semper Verde Park just down the street. I will respond with as much information as I can. Obviously, things are just happening in the moment, but I want you to know that we should be able to safely go to our parks and that residents are concerned. And I want to make sure that we can give you all as much information as we can, and whether the city manager or the police chief can chime in. I think that that would be appropriate for you to all to share as much information as you can.
Thank you. So Councilmember Aguilar, please.
Thank you, Mayor Gonzalez. I just wanted to share with the public that I received a signed photograph and a letter from President Joe Biden, and it reads, "Dear Mr. Aguilar, it was great to see you at National League of Cities Congressional City Conference to celebrate NLC's centennial anniversary. Thank you for your kind words and for all the great work you do for the people of San Leandro. Please know that my message to the LGBTQI+ community remains clear. I have your back. Bill and I wish you and your loved ones all the best. Keep the faith. President Joe Biden." I also want to reiterate that I will be attending the Harvard Senior Executives in State and Local Government. I did receive the prestigious Bonet Fellowship, which was in the amount of $17,400. I will be leaving May 31st and attending the session June 3rd through June 21st, and I will coordinate with Kelly to give you a location so I can attend my meetings remotely as to the session will be completed and I will be able to commit to my civic duty. Also, I was accepted to the Untapped Fellowship. They have 5 dates with locations in Los Angeles, Tehachapi, Richmond, Sacramento, and San Diego, which I also received a scholarship for $500. The total program amount is $3,000. So there's a remaining balance of $2,500. And I too have been receiving lots of concerns and comments with regards to what happened at Safeway and the actual person who conducted the stabbing was minor, And in that sense, what are we doing to make sure that we're opening spaces up to help educate our youth with regards to after-school programs? And so I just wanted to point that out. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Councilmember Baloo, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple quick follow-ups. I'll try to be brief. Some know that I serve as the treasurer of the Boys and Girls Club. We have a lot of after-school programs for teens. Also, San Leandro High, where I coach football. There's a ton of after-school opportunities for students, whether it's athletics, sports, or any other extracurriculars. I still think we do need to continue to reach out to our community to encourage people to do the pre-work that Councilmember Bowen and Aguilar both spoke of. Wanted to let the clerk know and the mayor and the rest of my council know that on June 10th, the joint meeting with us, and I think the school board, I will have to attend remotely. I have a work conflict. If I can't attend remotely because the room we're in doesn't support it, then I'll have to miss the meeting. On June 17th, I will be out of town. I will be in the state of Alaska, and if I will plan to attend that meeting remotely. The issue of concern, I do have one issue of concern. I will work, I'm not going to go into great detail tonight, but I'm going to work with our city manager, Fran Robustelli, our other city managers, Janelle Cameron and Michael Ewan. Hopefully they'll work with Human Services and the police department. I just don't think we're doing a very good job for our business community when RVs come in and take over their streets. I think it takes too long. I think 45 days is an abomination. In fact, 45 days ago, a lady reached out to me from my district about a RV encampment on Polverosa that she had some fear when she was walking by. That was 45 days ago. Since then, she did hear from the police chief, but she went by today and sent me some new pictures saying nothing's changed. So I think we can do better as a city. And I will be probably talking more in detail on Wednesday morning's Rules Committee meeting, where we're going to be talking about homelessness and the impact it has on our community. But I think we as a city can do better, and I am concerned. Those are my comments, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, looking down that aisle, can we check to see his, okay, so I've got Councilmember Azevedo, so we'll go to him next.
Yes, I'll be at the May 29th, I'll be at the farmers market hosting a booth with city manager Fran Robustelli, answering questions about District 2. And a major concern that I'm hearing about is pedestrian safety. People crossing the street, almost getting hit by cars or getting hit by cars. So yeah, we need to do something about that. That's really important to the community. That's all my comments. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Aguilar, coming back to you.
Thank you, Mayor Gonzalez. I just wanted to also address a comment that former Councilwoman Karina Lopez had brought up with regards to discriminatory and slurs on social media with regards to my sexual orientation. I've been called a fag publicly, a pedophile, and there are allegations that have been listed on there. I've been working with our city attorney to make sure that we reach out with X, the formerly Twitter platform, to work and make sure that these comments are taken down. It's extremely hurtful. I was hanging out on the weekend when I was alerted by community members with regards to what has been posted. So I think we need to work together to make sure that we're monitoring that and that the language on there is suitable for everyone, not just attacking me personally because I openly gay leader. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other comments, I will jump in with a few thoughts. So Councilmember Aguilar and I have been working on the pride flag raising to coordinate exactly when that will happen, whether it happens on the 1st or the 3rd. But we will keep tuned to social media to see the exact details of how we do that. And that will be before our June 3rd meeting for sure. So this is our last public announcement of that. We certainly are very interested in the volunteerism process. We've talked a lot about a volunteer coordinator. We actually are making some progress on that. In addition to that, there have been certain companies that have shown some interest. So I will be meeting with one of those companies this week who's adamant that we can work together to promote volunteerism in the city. More broadly on economic development, I'll be meeting with folks at Prologis this coming week, as well as one of our automobile dealerships who's been facing a number of challenges with respect to crime in the city. And you know, that the automobile dealerships are an important part of our ecosystem and our revenue sources here. Reminder, of course, to everybody, the Cherry Festival is June 1st. I'm surprised no one said anything about the Cherry Festival, so I'll add that on to make sure. Please attend. And for those of you that are homebound and are listening to us and just aren't able to attend, we will actually be live broadcasting, I believe, the parade and perhaps some of the events surrounding the Cherry Festival. Thank you, Councilmember Azevedo, for highlighting the farmers market. Please know that all council members have been invited to participate in that process. I forget what day I signed up for it, sometime towards the end of June. And then Councilmember Blue, I know that you had told me about a Boys and Girls Club event on Thursday, I believe, at 7 p.m. And it's something about Youth of the Year, the different sites, very uplifting sort of event. I don't know if there's still opportunities to attend that.
Yes, everyone's invited. I believe it's 6 o'clock.
Yeah, so I went last year. I won't be able to make it this year, but last year was a rather inspiring event. So the young folks are often say some very touching words about kind of what they've been inspired to do and how they've been supported by the Boys and Girls Club. Okay, so with that, let's move on to item number 12, presentations, and we don't have any today, so we'll move to our action items. As I mentioned earlier, 13A will be considered at our next meeting, so we're going on to 13B. And this is with respect to adopting a resolution to approve amendments to the 2023-2024 and 2024-2025 General Fund, Special Revenue Fund, Enterprise Funds, and Internal Services budgets. And to give context, this is something that came to Finance Committee first, if I remember correctly. Yes. So it came to us and it was approved unanimously for bringing to the City Council, the full council. So we have Finance Director Michael Yuen introducing this item.
Thank you again, Mayor and council members. Hopefully this is the last presentation you will receive from me tonight. But this is the mid-cycle budget adjustment for fiscal years 24 and 25. As you know, the City of San Leandro budgets on a biennial basis. So every 2 years, we take a deep dive and a hard scrub on the budget, and we set forth a priority and spending plan for the 2 years coming up. And then in the middle of that biennial cycle, we do an adjustment by taking a look at what has come in and trying to do our best to figure out what will play out for the remainder of the current fiscal year as well as the upcoming fiscal years. So some of the factors that we kept in mind when putting together this mid-cycle was we wanted to really align our revenues to the actual trends that we were seeing as well as the economic conditions that we were reading and hearing about. We wanted to adjust areas where changes are necessary based on what we were hearing from other staff as well as other city leaders. We want to continue to have caution given the economic uncertainty. I'm sure last year at this time, you were hearing that a recession was coming. A recession never came. This year, you're hearing that the Federal Reserve will cut rates as early as June. Now you're hearing that perhaps it's September. All of that uncertainty we're trying to balance and keep in mind as we're trying to put this budget together. And then we want to also maintain focus on the financial foundation and the long-term sustainability of the budget that this city has. So I'll spend a lot of time talking about the general fund. That is the sole discretionary source of funding for the city. Here are the key adjustments to the revenue side for the general fund. We are proposing a slight increase in sales tax to reflect data projecting low growth. This is actually good news, even though it's a slight increase, because last year at this time, the projection was a decrease. We are proposing a modest increase in property tax revenues. This is to basically align the growth in our property tax revenues to what the county assessor has on his property tax valuation rolls. We are proposing a large decrease in property transfer tax. As you've all probably heard, there is a very high cost lending market right now, which is creating a cascade of impacts on the real estate market, including low inventory, which is leading to much fewer transfers of property, not just single-family homes, but fewer commercial and industrial properties transferring as well. We are proposing a modest increase in utility users tax. What we have seen in this nationwide, frankly, over the past couple of years, our utility costs have increased. And when that takes place, utility user tax revenue also increases. So this is just aligning with industry costs. We are also proposing a modest increase in franchise fees. This is also tied to utility provider revenue for the most part. Most of the franchise agreements are utility providers, and when utility revenue at these companies go up, that means since we get a percentage of that, the revenue to the city goes up in the form of franchise fees. We are proposing a modest increase in interest and property income. This is to align the fact that we have greater amounts of dollars invested now and putting back to work for the city. We are getting those returns, and there are favorable returns as well as increased rental income. We are proposing a modest increase in charges for services because we are seeing greater revenue from city services and programs that the city provides. And then a very slight increase in other revenue to align this line item with historical trends and actuals that we've seen over the years. So on this slide, you kind of see three sections in this table. Revenues on the left side, those are revenue categories. And then in the middle, you'll see a section for 23-24. That's the current fiscal year. And then the far right, a section for 24-25. That's the budget year, as I call it. So for the current year proposed budget adjustment, the middle column in that middle section, $1.9 million in revenue adjustments that we are adding to the budget. And in the budget year, $3.3 million in revenue that we are adding to the budget. Now to the other side of the house, the expenditures for the general fund. Key adjustments here in the city manager's office, we are investing in strategic organizational training, not just for executive staff, but also for council members. We are investing to continue to fund citywide communications efforts, not just on the operational side, but also in the staffing that has supported those operations. For fire services, we are going to experience increased labor costs of $697,000. So that investment is in this adjustment. And for recreation and parks, we are investing in additional scholarships for our Rec Link program, which subsidizes registration fees for low-income residents. We are investing in costs for programming registration as we see more registrations. The program that supports that registration has higher costs. We are investing in additional park and landscape maintenance costs, and we are investing in staffing costs. As you recall, late last year, you approved a reorganization where the former Parks Division of the old Public Works Department moved into a new Recreation and Parks Department. We added a couple of positions to support that work. Most of that transfer, if you will, was funded in-house, but there's a portion where we do need to support with additional costs as well to make sure they have sufficient resources to actually pay the staff that transferred over. So that is in this budget adjustment as well. For human services, we are investing in not just a couple of positions, but also kind of a revamp of the classifications that are in the human services department to make sure that we have the right positions as well as sufficient positions to support the priorities of that department. For library, we are also investing in staffing costs to expand services as well as prepare for the opening of the Mulford Marina Library. And we are also investing in something that through the strategic planning process at the library, community focus groups really said they wanted as a priority, which are public study pods. For Public Works, we are investing in staff for the administrative, environmental services, and engineering divisions to ensure that there is continuity in the work that they're doing. And in community development, we are investing in downtown coordinated cameras, a system that will work to strengthen the public safety concerns downtown, as well as investing in the Safety Ambassadors program to provide coverage for the morning hours. And then in the adjustment for the general fund side, there's also some technical corrections. Every 2 years when we do that heavy scrub of the budget, we make some assumptions on what vacancy rates will be throughout the city. And we found when we were doing this adjustment that perhaps we were a little too aggressive in our vacancy assumptions for some of the departments. Part of this is HR doing an incredible job bringing folks into the city with our people first strategy and staffing up the city. But whatever the case, there's a cost to that. We were too aggressive in our vacancy rates, so we want to make sure that we're fixing that so all departments have the correct amount of money to be able to pay their staff. Same story on the pension side of the house. Every 2 years, we make certain assumptions on pensions. What types of people will be employed here, how many people will leave, and we put that all into the budget. Well, the mid-cycle is a good opportunity to review that as well. And we found that perhaps we were a little too aggressive with our pension assumptions as well. So we are truing that up with an investment here to fix that and make sure that we have the right level of funding to pay for those costs. And then there's a very small adjustment to invest in a line to pay for compensated absences and payouts. Whenever folks retire or attrit from the city does have to pay for their leave balances that they have on the books. This is a way to ensure that we have the right funding level to do that. So overall, on the expenditure side of the house for the general fund, you'll see a similar table to what you saw for revenue. 2 sections on the right here for fiscal year 23-24, which is the current year, and added $2.4 million in costs, and in the budget year, and added $3.3 million of costs. Next, I want to show you what the general fund forecast looks like. But before I do that, as you know, because I've shared this previously, I'd like to walk through what the assumptions were in putting that forecast together. So first and foremost, we do have pension cost increases built into the forecasts that are consistent with the actuarial reports that we have. We've assumed that there will be some sort of recession in 2026 because those occur every 6 to 7 years, and the last one was toward the beginning of the pandemic. We've incorporated annual salary growth that's aligned with the MOUs that we have with our labor organizations. We've assumed market inflation for all other non-labor costs. But of important note is only council-approved priorities are included in the forecast. So, for instance, we know there are obligations that we have that are unfunded. But until we get council direction or appropriation or authority to fund those obligations, they are not in the forecast. We just know that they're lingering out there. And then finally, as I like to say, to cover my bases, it's a forecast, so fluctuations will always occur. So this is the general fund forecast that you see. It should be very familiar to you because it's the exact same forecast that you saw 1 month ago at your priority setting session. We have actually built in the mid-cycle adjustments. Those were in that forecast that you saw a month ago. But you'll see the first 2 columns of years here, 23-24, 24-25. In 23-24, $139.9 million in revenue compared to $160.1 million in expenditures. Now that's intentional and is driven by a couple of things. First and foremost, when we end every fiscal year, 99.9% of the time, we will end it with a surplus. And the surplus is driven by increased revenue and basically underspending, expenditures that we did not spend. So what staff will do is we will look at all the unspent expenditures and we will say, what can we realistically spend in the new year? Package that up, bring that before you, council approves it. We add that then to that amount. So about 10 million of that 160 are basically unspent expenditures from the prior year. And then the second part of why that's so large is because council has made the strategic direction over the course of the past few years to spend down the large fund balance that we have, knowing full well that there are a lot of needs in the city of San Leandro. So with that said, for the current year, we will need to bring in about $20 million from our undesignated fund balance. And then in the next fiscal year, 24-25, $144 million in revenue compared to $149 million in expenditures. That will necessitate about a $5.6 million draw from fund balance. But you will see that beginning in 28-29, if you look at the very last line, that we will soon run out of available undesignated funds, right? Which is why you see a large red circle around the next biennial budget. That is the next biennial where we need to get serious with balancing a structural deficit to prevent the cascading years of negative numbers to the right. But then at the very bottom, just a few bullets of what I mean of things we know we have to eventually consider, but are not built into the forecast. We know that for roads, we have about $13 million annually that we need to pay just to bring them up to an acceptable condition. Stormwater infrastructure, you heard a presentation on this earlier this evening. We have a $3 million annual need there. And then for facilities maintenance, we've recently done a facilities condition assessment, which is basically telling us that for the valuation of our facilities, we could probably spend about $1 million more each year just to keep them at an average acceptable condition. So that's the general fund forecast. This next slide that I want to share with you is the fund balance forecast. The general fund forecast is the budget. Fund balance forecast is what we have in the bank. So what we have in the bank, the good news is if you look at the very top line, the beginning balance, we have $97 to $54 million if you look at all 8 years. But keep in mind that we have other obligations with our fund balance. We have designations for certain things that the fund balance is designated to fund, as well as an emergency reserve of $5 million and an economic uncertainties reserve that equals 20% of our expenditures. So those designations and reserves are at the bottom. So when you factor everything out, that's when you get to the bottom line. So although we are beginning this fiscal year with $97 million, we are ending it with $16 million. And if you do that same exercise, you'll see that by 28-29, we've reached the same thing that you saw on the prior slide, where there's $2.2 million that we actually don't have and we need to find resources for. So I just want to wrap up with key highlights from other funds. In the Water Pollution Control Plant Fund, we are seeing increased costs from the East Bay Dischargers Authority for the fees that they charge, as well as increased costs for parts, supplies, and services. Those investments are in this adjustment. For information technology, we have invested or proposing an investment of network replacement, as well as some increased software costs. For our internal services fund for insurance services, we are seeing increased premiums for workers' comp and liability, so that investment is in here. And then we are also making some technical adjustments here as well. So for pensions, we're also moving some interest from the shoreline sale that's in the general fund over to a capital improvement project for that shoreline project. And we are correcting an appropriation here that was not made 2 years ago, but should have been. 2 years ago, council approved cameras for the police department. So that bill has never been paid. And we are proposing for that adjustment to be made, or for that payment to be made in this mid-cycle adjustment to fund the request that you approved 2 years ago. So the overall city budget now with this mid-cycle adjustment is for the current year, $223.6 million in revenues compared to $236.8 million in expenditures. And for the budget year, $224.6 million in revenues compared to $228.2 million in expenditures. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions you have on this budget.
Okay, so at this point in time, we will move to council member questions prior to taking public comment. Councilmember Aguilar, please.
Thank you, Michael, for the presentation. Can you go back about 4 slides right there and going to the ending fund balance all the way until 2030? So this is just a predicted structural deficit.
That's correct. To be really technical, the predicted structural deficit is actually on this slide. The line that's titled transfer in from available undesignated funds. It's about 2/3 of the way down. What this slide is basically how is this slide going to affect what we have in the bank? So this slide here, the fund balance forecast, is all about the money that we have in the bank.
Gotcha. Thank you for explaining that. Sure. Those are my
Any other questions? Vice Mayor Simon, please.
Your slides, I saw a description of a study pod at the library. Can you describe what that is?
Yeah, so a study pod, we do have Director Simons here if I'm not doing this any justice, but a study pod is basically a mostly private study space for one or multiple persons to reserve and study in. They can study, they can hold meetings, do interviews, whatever their business is. But it is encapsulated to provide privacy, but also to prevent distractions from other patrons of the library who are outside of the pod.
And which libraries are this?
This is for the main library.
Main library. Thank you.
Sorry, I punched you out. If you can just, there you go. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, my second question has to do with, I understand priorities that the council has defined are included in the budget. But certain items, and one I'll bring up is the, I had raised this at an item 14 at some point. This is the increase in the reward for Joel Ramirez from 50,000, I think it was to $100,000 for a cold case murder. And if we're moving forward with this, how do we adjust for, because we have to have a follow-up on our party session. How do we adjust for items that may come up in our party session if the council so agrees?
So Vice Mayor Simon, what we typically do when there's a specific item that comes from council is first and foremost, we see if we can absorb that in our existing budget. So in that particular case, if it were to increase a reward, I believe it was from 15,000 to 100,000.
50 to 100.
50 to 100. So that is basically a $50,000 increase. We most likely would be able to absorb that from some part of our budget. As you know, there are plenty of salary savings throughout the city. We would probably look for salary savings to help cover that if that were the direction from council.
Thank you.
Is that it? Okay. Councilmember Viveros Walton, please.
Thank you. I wanted to elevate some concerns that we received from the community, and it's specific to the Public Works budget. Specifically, I'm just going to my attachments on the, where is it? Environmental Services Manager. I think there is a community misconception, and I just wanted to get some clarification from the city manager and from you on the sustainability let me just get the sustainability manager versus the environmental services manager. We can get some clarification based on the concerns that we received from some of the community members.
So
And I'll leave it up to.
So let's start with city manager and proceed from there.
Thank you. So first I'll maybe give some clarification on classification. So although they both have the title manager, the sustainability manager is part of the management analyst classification, and the new proposed environmental services manager is actually a manager classification. The distinguishing characteristics of those two positions are a manager would be overseeing a division or like a programmatic division. And so what we're proposing is expanding the footprint to do two things. One, bring together a team that's already within the city, but they are segregated to some degree. We have a recycling coordinator that works independently. We have, you know, the third position in that division off the top of your head? No? Okay. And then the sustainability manager, and an administrative specialist 3, which helps with a series of technical assistance to those programs. The environmental services manager is also going to bring underneath them the management of our waste contract, so our trash contract that you'll be getting here soon. And when you see that presentation, you'll see how expansive it is in the climate sustainability area. So this was an attempt to bring together a team of people within the Public Works Department who also support a lot of our infrastructure projects from the climate action plan perspective.
And to be really clear on that last piece, that would include SB 1383, compliance, composting, blah, 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 right?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions at this time? Seeing no other questions, let's move to public comment on this item. I'm sorry, just to confirm, Councilmember Azevedo online, did he have his hand raised? Does not appear that way. Okay, so let's move to public comment.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, there's no public comment in person. We have 2 public comments online, however.
Okay, let us go online, please.
Lucas, you may unmute yourself.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you for taking my comment. I'd just like to start my remarks by saying and imploring the council to cut spending and raise taxes to fix the structural deficit issue. This year in attachment B, it talks about how we're 20 million in the hole. We projected revenues of 140. We're 20 in the hole. That's about 15% off the mark. 15% is a lot. Next year, 5.5 million. That's a lot. I look at slide 11 in the presentation in attachment G. We start the year with the beginning balance in the fund of 97 million. We're going to end at 77, and then the following year 71, and in a few years we're going to be down to 54. It took us 150 years to get to 97 million in fund balance savings, and we're going to spend half of it in the next few years. That's irresponsible. The other thing that I want to draw the attention of the council to is that earlier you approved the financial audit for the last year, and I want to read you a few sentences from attachment C of the single audit report, page 6. Our audit disclosed significant deficiencies. From attachment G, page 5. In addition, because of inherent limitations in internal controls, including the possibility of management override of controls, misstatements due to error or fraud may occur and not be detected by such controls. However, as discussed below, we identified certain deficiencies in internal control that we consider to be significant deficiencies. There are 14 pages worth of attachments and addenda that explain every deficiency, from timeliness of bank reconciliations to timeliness of posting journal entries, unrecorded loans receivable. The structural budget deficit is the symptom of what this audit is reporting, and I am very concerned that we won't fix it unless we cut spending and raise taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug Spalding, you may unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. I'm with that watchdog, Lucas. Thank you, Lucas. That was very informative. Well, there are a couple of things that didn't quite pass the smell test, past my nose. One is the idea that with regards to the property transfer tax, there's going to be lower inventory. And I realize that projection is based on what's been happening over several months, but over the last few weekends, I don't know if you've been around town, but there are dozens and dozens and dozens of homes that are showing and on the market. And so I think that trend, that little trend is gonna change. The other is $100,000 to improve or change the registration system for Parks and Rec. Isn't that like an electronic thing? It seems a little steep in my mind. I read these budget things as the setting of priorities. I think that's how most of you would put it too. And so it makes sense to me. Let's hire a couple of librarians so that the Mulford branch can be open full time. Everybody supports that. I like seeing the job classifications and human services change over from the old recreation designation, since that is now a department that stands on its own and now under the rubric of human services. But what I don't see in the budget is providing for a priority that has clearly been set, which is to establish mental health first. And I know the fire department's working on that, but if we're waiting for external funding, I don't know that it's ever going to happen fully. But maybe it's akin to the navigation center. Excuse me. Maybe you guys need to take some steps forward, and then some funding will be forthcoming. I don't know. But I also am looking at public works, and again, the stuff about sustainability. It sounds like sustainability is going to be subsumed by stormwater runoff and sewage, and really not get the due I understand the interest in coordinating things, but it just seems like it's going to have a lower priority. Thank you.
Your time is up. Mr. Mayor, there is no more public comment.
So we'll close public comment at this time and move to council member commentary discussion. Does anybody have their hand online? Nope. Okay. So, council member Aguilar, please.
Thank you, Mayor Gonzalez. I wanted to thank Michael for a great presentation, even in Finance Committee. We had a lot of great conversation and debate over our current budget. I don't have any other comments, but if nobody else does, I'd like to move this item.
Okay. So we will accept the motion from council member Aguilar. Councilmember Vivotis Walton.
So moved.
Okay, so I've got a second from Councilmember Vivotis Walton. I will make just a couple of quick comments. So always, Lucas, we really appreciate your comments. Do know that at Finance Committee, we spoke specifically about the significant deficiencies list and the remediation plan that has been put into place. Progress is being made against that plan. And so we'll be receiving updates on that periodically. And then the other thought, I know that the $100,000 around the registration system was called out. Specifically, we received commentary from our community about some of the challenges in registering and accessing rooms in our libraries, and we want to make sure that we're affording everyone the opportunity to access those equitably through a consistent method approach. And so just be aware that sometimes where we're spending the money might not necessarily be clear as to why we're doing it, but that's why it's good to engage in this type of dialogue. At this point in time, if there's no further discussion, let's vote.
Councilmember Azevedo, your vote.
Aye.
All votes are in. Motion passes 7-0. Councilmember Azevedo, yes. Councilmember Aguilar, yes. Councilmember Baloo, yes. Councilmember Bowen, yes. Councilmember Viveros Walton, yes. Vice Mayor Simon, yes. And Mayor Gonzalez, yes.
So at this point in time, we're going to move to item 13C. I am sensitive to that at some point we're probably going to need to take a break, but let's see if we can get through 13C, and then we will take our break. This is the item is to adopt a resolution to approve reimbursements. A city council member to attend a strategic organizational training. And then this is being presented by City Manager Robustelli.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council members, and the public. Just a brief verbal presentation. Wanted to give you a little bit of background of how this idea came about. I actually was privileged and fortunate to be partially sponsored to attend the Harvard Executive Leadership Program when I worked for the city of Hayward. And in my 30 years in local government, it was one of the most profound executive leadership experiences that I've ever had. And came back really inspired and have taken many of those leadership learnings and applied them even here in San Leandro. Fast forward a little bit, and about 5 years ago, I got tapped on the shoulder to teach a course on ethics and organizational culture at Stanford Leadership Government Institute. And that is another university-sponsored program that the audience is geared towards executives and department heads. And the Harvard program is unique in that it's geared towards elected officials and administrators. So it's one of the only programs in the country that brings those two expertise together. And they spend 3 weeks together learning how to lead different kinds of government entities. And so when I arrived here in San Leandro last year, former Councilmember Reynes had asked me about the program, and we had a conversation, and she said, "Do you think the city would support this program?" And I said, "Well, I can certainly bring it to the council." And in thinking through it, I thought, what a cool idea if San Leandro actually sponsored a cohort of electeds and executive members and sent them annually to this program. And to do that, I know I recognize it's an expensive program. I can tell you from experience, it's well worth it. And so tonight I bring this item forward. And then fast forward again, in the last several months, Councilmember Bowen advised me that she had been accepted from the program to the program. And Councilmember Aguilar had also advised me that he had been accepted to the program and had received a scholarship to attend with all his tuition funded by the fellowship. So tonight I'm here, you just adopted the budget, so the funding is allotted in the next year's budget for attendance. And to make sure that there's transparency on council member attendance, the item is before you for council members, for you all to essentially vote and give me a resolution authorizing me to reimburse for that tuition. And then from a procedural perspective, if there's adequate funding, the city manager could go through the same similar process we have for Alameda County leadership, where we go through a almost an internal application process and could possibly select an executive team member to attend either Harvard or Stanford. Also looking forward this year, because we were kind of late in the budget process, the amount was about half of what I was going to recommend. So I'm telling you this now because I won't be here next year when you do the 2-year budget. But the vision was to put forth enough to send 2 council members and 2 executive team members to some type of advanced leadership training that's been similar to these programs. So that's my presentation, and recommending that you move the resolution forward.
Okay, so at this point in time, we will take council member questions prior to accepting public comment. Councilmember Aguilar.
Thank you, Mayor Gonzalez. I'm so excited to be a part of this program, and I know that you're a fellow alum. My question is, how would we, in the future, make sure that there's process and procedure as to whom gets selected? I mean, who would get the funding approved? So if there were 3 of us that got approved to the program, would we all get a scholarship, or would we all put forth that we get funding for to attend Harvard or Stanford?
City manager.
So there are 2 cohorts every year, June and July. I know both of you are going to different cohorts. They typically will do that so that you can actually still participate as a council person or a staff person in the city. If the council so desired, this process could start earlier. So the council could put forth an approval for application, and then they would know who was applying. And then subsequent to that, the funding request could be authorized. And so you kind of open up the application period. And then those who were interested in going that year could put their name in and then have the council approve moving forward with application and funding if they got accepted in one motion.
Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, let's turn to public comment, please.
Mr. Mayor, there's 2 public comments in person and 3 online.
Thank you. Please proceed in person.
Charles Go.
Hello again. Charles Go. I'm a Harlan Street resident. It is my understanding, because there has been no dollar figure that has been put forward. When I looked at this, the online travel reimbursement is $25,800. Is that right? The Harvard Kennedy training.
Okay, so
in-person training.
You
That
pause-
is
pause for-
right. I just looked it
pause
up.
for a second. I
Okay.
I don't think I've seen you before, so I want to make sure our process is clear. In order to let you maximize the questions that you ask and our ability to get things covered in your 2 minutes, we're going to take notes on what your questions are, and then she will have the opportunity to answer the questions. unless you prefer to be, going back and forth during your 1 minute and 28 seconds.
Okay, thank
So-
you.
So you're going to lay out your
Mayor.
questions. The first question, if you can just reframe it because I interrupted you.
Okay, my first question is that the dollar figure that is being proposed to be reimbursed for this training is 25,800.
Okay, now we will begin your time and you can continue with other questions.
Thank you. And so my comment is, wow, that's more than my mother's Social Security annual income. That my nephew's UC tuition fee for a year is 15,000. That is over 10,000 more. I would urge this council to really think about how much that is, and maybe even think about investing. If God, wouldn't it be great if this council think about 14,000 or 15,000 for one of your youth council people, sponsor them, or other uses, work with the Boys and Girls Club. It's just, to me, this amount is really 3 weeks, 25,800. I would really urge you to think and vote no on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Cynthia Prieto Diaz.
Hey there. Dear Council, Mayor, and St. Leandro leadership again, and public, apologies, I forgot you earlier. I also recommend voting no on this resolution for additional reimbursement. I did read the handbook, and my understanding was that there is already $10,000 worth of allocation for training. I also acknowledge that one of our council members will be attending, so I think what a great opportunity to potentially do cross-training in-house. And I don't know the exact monetary amount, but if it is approximately $20,000 for this program, and if that funding is available, which it sounds like funding may not be available soon, that maybe we can reinvest in alternatives by installing and monitoring, installing and maintaining an air quality monitoring network for the entire San Leandro Unified School District as an alternative to this, where we could also be investing in our youth, start with STEM programming for the schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, there is no more public comment in person. We will go online.
Yep.
Jesse, you may unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening.
Hello, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you. I am giving public comment tonight to make clear that voters are not interested in seeing council meeting time sucked up by political infighting. The dysfunction that we witnessed at the Saturday work session you held recently to discuss priorities is unacceptable. And word on the street is that same dysfunction is
I'm going to
expected.
ask you to pause for, I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you to pause for just a second.
Okay.
So this is comment specifically on whether we adopt a resolution to reimburse city council members.
I understand.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that it's not general public comment. Thank you.
It is not.
Proceed. Please proceed.
The dysfunction that we witnessed at the Saturday work session you held recently to discuss priorities is unacceptable. And word on the street is that same dysfunction is expected to bleed over in your discussion of this item tonight. If anyone on council can ask for and receive the type of support this resolution is set to allocate, there is no reason to single out Councilmember Bowen for requesting and receiving the same. And I might add, I believe that the city manager just mentioned that you just adopted a budget that allocates funding for this exact same professional development opportunity for next year. Stop wasting time on pettiness and infighting. I won't stand for it, and neither will the local voters I know. We are watching. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Bailey, you may unmute yourself.
Hi, this is Bob Bailey. I want, calling in to approve or support this resolution. I'm actually encouraged to see the city council supporting funding leadership development training for its council members. It is in the community's interest for our elected officials to be as effective as possible. As a Harvard Kennedy School grad myself, I can vouch for the value of the experience. In that vein, I also believe the city council and the city manager should invest in the development of community members serving on our boards and commissions to increase their capacity to provide informed counsel to the city council and staff. I have been advocating for city support to send one CPRB member a year to the annual National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement. I have been told to do so would mean the city should do so for all boards and commissions. And I entirely support doing just that. And perhaps any funding support can be means tested to target any financial support from the city in ways that are equitably broaden access to such opportunities for our boards and commissions. Thank you.
Thank you. Lucas, you may unmute yourself.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Council, for taking another one of my comments. I reside in District 5, and I do have, I would like my representative and council member to be well informed in, in the ways of doing the people's business. But I'm calling in to oppose this. This reimbursement resolution doesn't have a number attached to it. If there ever was a blank check, this is what it looks like. There is no dollar amount here, and I just can't support that. I want to call out that the handbook on page 15 says that we already allocate $10,000 per year for city business or training, and some of the council members did the responsible thing and went and got a independent scholarship to fund the difference between the 10,000 and what I think is a 30,000 total charge or thereabouts. And some council members want to be reimbursed out of the people's money, and that's not right. I want to echo the comments of one of the earlier speakers who said, this is more than some people get in Social Security a year. I'd like to remind the council that the federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour, which for 40 hours a week and 52 weeks a year, if you work every week the whole year, is about $15,000 in total earnings for that person. This is ridiculous. No, I won't say ridiculous. This is excessive. It's excessive given that we already allocate $10,000. Earlier today, the council approved the the salary schedule for a whole slew of city workers, and at step 1 and step 2 and step 3, some city workers are making $60-$70 an hour. So I can see how the council might not be in perspective with how much people make, but this is very excessive.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, there's no more public comment in person or
So
online.
we will close public comment and move to council member discussion. Councilmember Aguilar.
Thank you, Mayor Gonzalez. I just wanted to say that, I support higher education. I also support our council member Bowen going to Harvard. I mean, it's one thing to apply. It's another thing to get accepted. There's a difficult application process. But I was fortunate enough to gain knowledge about a fellowship, which I was asked to apply and receive full support for the full amount of $17,400. I asked that, if we do support this, that we add nonprofits leadership in this. I mean, Harvard and Stanford are both nonprofit universities, private nonprofits, and that we specifically add that language. So if there's a leadership program such as water education for Latino leaders, which I got accepted to, and I also received a partial scholarship of $500 for the tuition amount of $3,000. The only amount would be $2,500. And if I'm able to fundraise that, I will do so. But if not, I would ask that this be put in or paid separate from our current allocation, which, me being a leader in National League of Cities, there are many events that I have to attend to participate. But I just wanted to read a letter with regards to water education for all Latino leaders. It said, it brings me great pleasure to let you know that you have been selected as a recipient of a $500 scholarship for the Well Untapped Fellowship Program. The scholarship is awarded due to your leadership skills and commitment to addressing and learning about the water challenges in your community. The Well Untapped Fellowship Program offers an excellent water education and training program to local Latino elected officials. Fellows will be able to deepen their understanding of the fundamentals of water policy and governance to ensure that they have context for and participation in water policy decisions. It is the mission of the Well Untapped Fellowship Program to educate and develop those beneficiaries to become strong voices and effective policymakers in the advancement of clean, sustainable water throughout the state of California, not only throughout the state, but also federally. So I just ask that we include language to include nonprofits. I mean, like I said, Stanford and Harvard are nonprofits, private nonprofits, but include that so that we can include WELL and other organizations that do offer leadership programs to be included. And I ask to add $2,500 into that in this process. So we'll need to make a motion to adopt that. I'll leave that up to us to decide. But I am supportive of this and sending my council colleague. I'm someone that supports higher education, and you know, it's a prestigious program. Like Fran had mentioned, you develop great relationships, and you're also attached to the Harvard Kennedy School of Government network. So that is something that I think we'll all benefit from.
Okay, so I've got Councilmember Viveros Walton next.
Thank you. I just wanted to express my support. I know that it is an significant investment, but I think that elected officials, we do a lot of learning on the job. And it's a steep learning curve, and I can attest to the last couple of months. And I think this will be a great support, not just of investing in our leaders to make really important policy decisions that come before us, but it's also an investment in our city, and also hopefully in the future, we're also able to send city staff that are not just elected, but just in general, city leadership. I think this is one of those investments that comes back to the community in the way that it is led, administered, and then the policy that's created. So I am very excited and proud that 2 of our council members were admitted to this program. And excited to see what you all come back with. And I'm supportive of the resolution. Thank you for your time.
Councilmember Bully, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also want to express my support. I'm very familiar with the Harvard School. I didn't go. I wanted to go, and I ended up retiring too early, but it's a well-respected school, as are the one Stanford. I think there's others. Yale has one. The Arbinger Institute has one. But specifically on this resolution, it's not just going. If you miss a session at Harvard School, they send you home. You're done. It's not the typical kind of education where you just go and then you hang out at night, and it's the real deal. I know people that have gone. The leadership program that I'm involved with for California Post uses 2 of the authors that teach at the Harvard School for their primary textbook. They are hard line. You're there at 8 o'clock, or you're there at 9 o'clock, or whatever time they're starting, and you're expected to perform. There's homework, there's writing, and they want to know what you're going to do with it when you come back. I think there's even a check-in when you come back. So I think I was looking at some of the topics that they cover: crisis, emerging leaders, leadership and character in uncertain times, leading in the 21st century, strategies for building and leading diverse organizations, women in power, women leading change. I don't think we can champion ourselves as supporting DEI if we're not willing to send one of our women council members, in addition to Councilmember Aguilar, to this training. With regard to opening it up to any nonprofit that offers this, I think we do. I'm not opposed to that idea, but I think we have to strike a balance. We have to find a balance between what the public expects and what we can deliver. So I would say that if we're going to go down a road where we authorize any nonprofit, that we limit it to one attendance per term. So if you go to Harvard on the company's dime, then you wait 4 years and get reelected if you're going to go somewhere else. Otherwise, we're going to be accused of sucking up the public's money to just go to all these different trainings. I think there's probably a balance point there. There's a bunch of good ones. Say we pick one, And then on the other ones, we still have a travel budget that allows us to go. They're not quite as steep as Stanford or Harvard, but some of the others we can do within our travel budget. I also know there's some people that are very involved in Cal League of Cities, National League of Cities. There's some money through there if you're on one of their committees. There's other funding opportunities, but I think we have to find that balance point. So if we're going to do the nonprofit, my preference would be, and I would probably make a friendly motion to the amendment to see how it goes, that we limit that to one time every 4 years or one time every term. I think it affords people the opportunity to go to the trainings they want to go to, especially the steep ones. Yeah, but it also respects the public's wish that we don't overspend or overinvest. I think that's my comments. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, let's move to Vice Mayor Simon, please.
Yes, I wanted to show my support for Councilmember Bowen to attend this training. I think education is so important, and the budget that we passed today, millions and millions of dollars, I mean, the knowledge that she could bring back could save us easily what we'll be investing in her education. So I support that. I also want to congratulate Councilmember Aguilar on his scholarship. And also I want to support him on other nonprofit training sessions, such as the water example that Councilmember Aguilar brought up. We'd like to show him support for that, as water is so important here to all of our healths and all of our lives. Examples of that, I think it's important to bring knowledge back to our community.
Councilmember Bowen, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to share a few thoughts. As somebody who has a background in learning and development and organizational development, I feel an immense amount of gratitude and pride that our city manager and the leadership team have been so consistent in building out our staff and building a strong bench of leaders, as we've seen as things have transitioned. I take being on this council incredibly serious, and I see it as an honor and an opportunity. And I, like in all of my endeavors, strive for excellence. And part of that is learning how to be really good at my job. And in my job as a council member, I want us to be as effective and impactful and work towards achieving the goals that we want as a city. And that's why I applied to this program. And I'm doing it at the beginning of the front end of my term, so that I can really take the time to bring back this information and use it to truly help the city. And I recognize that it's an investment. And the thing that I love so much about this program, the way that our city manager has put forward, is that it really is focused too on supporting our senior staff. And that is critical, because if you look at surveys, the most recent one by McKinsey about why, the number one reason why people quit is due to a lack of career development and advancement. Compensation was also a factor. And number one thing was uncaring and uninspiring leaders. And so when you think about investing in your people, you're telling your staff, you're telling the people that you work with that they matter, they're valued, and you believe in them and their abilities. And so I really appreciate that this is something that we're going to be doing for our city. And I really also want to express gratitude to the large number of people that have emailed and spoke and called and messaged, expressing support for professional development and expressing support for me going to this program. And I also appreciate my fellow council members and their support and their trust in me. And I know that somebody mentioned coming back with training. I have led and facilitated enough workshops and would be happy to put together a pretty PowerPoint for everybody, and we could do some cross-training when I get back.
I think we've got all the comments in, so I'll offer a few thoughts of my own. I've been the beneficiary of receiving a scholarship from Bloomberg to attend the new mayor's conference at the Kennedy School. It was incredibly valuable, research-based guidance and instruction. I can certainly tell you that I have greatly benefited from a Ford Foundation scholarship to go to MIT. the quality of education that you get at some of these schools that's research-based is very powerful. It's not just touchy-feely stuff. It's based on science. And so I feel very strongly that we need to continue developing professionals. The thing that I really like about this is that I get that this resolution is about a specific spend of money, but there's budget for staff as well. And I think that that's important to recognize that this is just one particular allocation of money. I am sensitive to the fact that there are other needs. And I'm a big believer of investing in people and just improving talent and skills. I do have a question because I know this question has been raised multiple times about federal minimum wage in the United States. And not to belabor this too much, but I do appreciate that comment is consistently raised. So I think it is worth considering as we make this spend. I am curious, how many employees at the city of San Leandro do we pay $7.25 an hour?
No one.
Okay. From what I understand, we've got like a minimum wage in San Leandro / the Greater Bay Area of closer to $20 an hour or something like that. Certainly at fast food establishments.
That's correct.
Okay. Because I do think that we need to be realistic about what happens in the entire United States, ranging from certain cities in Louisiana or rural North Dakota, what happens in the San Francisco Bay Area, and how we think about the expenditures that we need to make, whether it's in public works, in maintaining a sustainability team through environmental services, or in training personnel. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to propose an amendment to the existing drafted resolution, because I do think that it's a little bit vague. And so I'm going to drive some greater precision and then offer some guidance in terms of what we do next. And so what I'm going to do is I've asked for a printing of the resolution. I know you guys probably have it on your computers, but basically what I'm asking is that where it currently says that Councilmember Bone is approved for reimbursement of travel and training expenses with respect to the Harvard Kennedy School program, I want a specific number. So my proposed amendment to this resolution is to say that it's $17,000 plus airfare. And we know from lots of travel that we've done over the last couple of years that airfare is probably going to be somewhere on the order of $1,000 ballpark. Okay, so that's just in terms of an expectation, it would be $17,000 plus airfare. And that secondly, we also amend it to include that Councilmember Aguilar will be provided $2,500 to attend the I think that's what it's called, right? UNWELL program as well. And then whether it needs to be part of the resolution or it can just be by consensus that we agree that we do need a process, that we need to think about that in terms of how we define who's eligible, what they're eligible for, and then we send that to rules so that we can hash out the pros and cons of different approaches and then come back to council with an actual recommendation of, well, it would be this period of time or that period of time, et cetera. So I'm going to go to first city attorney and see what it is that we can and cannot include, but I would suspect that we can include precise numbers in this resolution.
Yes, include the precise numbers in the resolution, and then what you just described about the further discussion, you should include it in the resolution as well.
Okay.
Mayor, I would also add that you should have a fourth whereas addressing Councilmember Aguilar's unwell. Is it really unwell or is it well? Well, thank you.
Capital W-E.
Yeah.
Nice stuff.
Well, fellowship, so that we have the organization for the record.
I'm trying to think about the most efficient way to do this. What I'm going to propose, I think, is that we do need to take a break. That maybe during this break, I can work with a couple of people to draft up what that language might look like so that we can print it out so that people can see it before we actually vote. But it should be a nominal tweak. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a break. We stand as we recess. Recess. Okay, so at this point in time, I'm going to bring us back to order. It is 9:44. Thank you for your patience while we were making some slight tweaks to the resolution to capture the spirit of what was discussed here. So first things first, City Attorney, I want to get confirmation that the nature of the tweaks that we're about to read into the record are permissible.
Yes, Mayor.
Okay, so with that in mind, what I'm going to do, City Clerk has put it up on the screen so that people can read. I'm going to make it as big as she can so that it fits on the screen still. And I'm going to read it into the record because I recognize that not everyone from the public has access to a printed piece of paper. We would have distributed, but we ran out of paper and we want to kind of keep moving forward with the meeting. So it's a resolution of the City of San Leandro City Council approving reimbursement for council members to attend strategic organizational training. Whereas City Council desires for city leaders to gain skills and insight for leadership training at university institutions and nonprofit organizations in order to promote continual learning and grow a professional bench of City Council members. And whereas funds are available for council members and staff leadership classifications to attend a 3-week senior executives in state and local government executive education program at the Harvard Kennedy School. And whereas funds are available for council members and staff leadership classifications to attend the Well Untapped Fellowship Program. And whereas approved council members can seek reimbursement from said budgeted funds for training travel costs that exceed stated amounts set forth in the City Council Member Handbook for this purpose only. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of San Leandro does resolve as follows. That Councilmember Sua Bowen is approved for reimbursement of travel and training expenses not to exceed $18,750 incurred while attending the senior executives in state and local government executive education program at the Harvard Kennedy School. And that Councilmember Victor Aguilar Jr. is approved for reimbursement of travel and training expenses not to exceed $3,500 incurred while attending the leadership program for elected leaders at the Well Untapped Fellowship Program. The process for future allocations will be developed by the Rules Committee for consideration by the full council. And that's the full text of the resolution. At this point in time, I will go to Council Member Blue.
So moved.
Councilmember Viveros Walton.
I second.
We have any further discussion at this time? Seeing none, please vote.
Councilmember Azevedo, your vote?
Aye.
All votes are in. Motion passes 7-0. Councilmember Azevedo, yes. Councilmember Aguilar, yes. Councilmember Baloo, yes. Councilmember Bowen, yes. Councilmember Viveros Walton, yes. Vice Mayor Simon, yes. Mayor Gonzalez, yes.
At this point in time, I'd like to move to item 13D. We know that the city clerk, Kelly Clancy, will introduce the item. And so, Ms. Clancy, the floor is yours.
Okay. IT, I need to share my screen again. Working on it. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight, we are here to talk about the City Council Handbook. We have previously received direction from Council to have a discussion regarding Vice Mayor, to talk about tech and travel allowance, to talk about the council adherence to the handbook. But in addition to those 3 items, there's also just some administrative cleanup. We added the language to be current with council compensation. We added language to memorialize the legislative break that happens every August. The future agenda item referral process has been updated and also the agenda order. To start, we will talk about selection and role of the vice mayor. So currently in the council handbook, it talks about how a vice mayor is selected and the terms in which a vice mayor can be selected during an election year. So language was added, some language was removed where you couldn't use the vice mayor language because that was previously added in a different edit of the handbook. So that has been removed. So now we can see that it says during an election year, an incumbent running for San Leandro City Council office shall not be appointed vice mayor. If a council member is running for re-election while serving as vice mayor, they are subject to automatic immediate resignation from the position. No council member may announce they're running or pull nomination papers while they serve as vice mayor. If a council member is running for San Leandro Council office, the ballot designation shall not include the words vice mayor. So that middle paragraph has been removed, and what remains is if a council member is running for city council, the ballot designation shall not include the words vice mayor. The comments and recommendations that came out of the Rules Committee are that the vice mayor rotation is based on seniority. Seniority is defined as the date of when you are sworn into office. If two council members have equal seniority, the option is to defer. There is an option to defer nomination. If more than one member remains, there will be a random name drawing to establish seniority for that year. The vice mayor title can only be used while conducting official business. It shall not be used on ballot or election materials. And should this policy be violated, then council shall consider removal of the vice mayor. And then council needs to discuss what happens when this rule is violated. There's also talk about reimbursement for expenses. There previously was no language in the handbook that talks about how you can, if you choose to travel by car versus travel by airplane. So the staff suggestions are that if a council member elects to travel by personal vehicle and airfare would be less expensive, the lower cost shall be used for reimbursement purposes. And to determine the reimbursement cost, staff will use the price of an economy plane ticket booked 60 days in advance, and at no time shall the expense exceed the approved budget for travel. This language was sent to rules and approved by the Rules Committee. Then a section was added that talks about adherence to the council handbook, talking about, we added the language that says any of these rules herein may be waived by a supermajority, which is a 2/3 vote, and that means 5 council members when it is deemed that there is good cause to do so based upon the particular facts and circumstances. Portions of this handbook may not be waived or superseded by a vote of the council, as they are pulled from the city charter or otherwise legally binding that require a specific process for amendment. The rules shall be amended by a majority of vote of the city council and may be amended administratively by city clerk's office in instances where the council has already taken action in order to remain current with federal and state local law. So council recommendations. We would like emphasis on the word rules, and there needs to be an agreement on the 5/7 vote for the supermajority. Then we discussed city council handbook enforceability. So this is a discussion item. When the policy restates existing federal or state law, city charter, municipal code, or administrative code, then enforcement is provided by existing law. Fines report to the Fair Political Commissions Act, district attorney or grand jury, and misdemeanor charge. When a written handbook policy memorializes a council or city custom, practice, norm, or best practice, the council must develop and pass its own consequences when there are violations. Such consequences may range from written admonishment or reprimand from the mayor or the city council to new or additional training requirements for a council member, to council member censure of the council member, city council censure of the council member. Also updated in this version are requests for future agenda items and urgent referrals. Language has been added that all requests made shall be submitted to the city manager and the city clerk in writing and in advance of the city council meeting to ensure the correct language for the permanent record. Language has also been added about reimbursement for expenses. This language has always existed in the administrative code. It was just added to be memorialized in the handbook that as council members and the mayor, you receive a $100 per diem and a $50 per one half day per diem and it's fixed, and it's to be determined as reasonable expenses to allow each member of the city council when traveling on official duty for all out-of-pocket expenses other than transportation and hotel. The other item that was added is the legislative break. The language added states that the city council shall observe an annual recess during the month of August. The duration of the recess shall encompass the entire month unless otherwise determined by a majority vote of the city council. The August recess shall be applicable to all city council, boards, and commission meetings. During the August recess, regular city council meetings shall be suspended. Special meetings may be called if urgent matters arise that require immediate attention. The decision to convene a special meeting during the August recess shall be made by a majority of the council members. Then there have been some adjustments made to the council agenda to streamline and create process efficiencies. So reducing the items, currently we're at 16 line items on the agenda, and we've condensed it down to 13. We've taken consent calendar and just made it one item, item 5. So we don't need items 4, 5, and 6 that say amendment of the consent calendar, and then items removed from the consent calendar. That can be all covered under items 5, and any items that may be removed from the consent calendar can be heard immediately after or placed anywhere on the agenda to be heard at a later time. We've also moved report on closed session up to be item 3, because if there is no closed session, then that's just a line item we don't even need to add. Otherwise, we can include that, and it's at the beginning of the meeting and before consent or any business actions that are taken on the agenda. We've also consolidated city council reports, calendar, and announcements to one item, 12, at the end of the meeting. And then city council requests for referrals, everything moves up to item 11, and then the business portion of the meeting falls between city manager and city attorney reports and council requests for future referrals. And that is my presentation. So now we open it up to discussion.
So thank you for the presentation. We will take questions about any of these individual items, then go to our public for comment, and then come back for discussion. Do we have any questions about the clerk's presentation? Councilmember Viveros Walton, please.
Thank you. I believe in rules I had suggested on the council referrals that staff provide a template. I'm just asking that question.
City manager.
Thank you for the question. Yes, assuming this is passed, we would create a template for you and send it out. Thank you.
Next question, Councilmember Aguilar, please.
Thank you, Mayor Gonzalez. I just had a question with regards to ballot designations. According to the Secretary of State, California Code of Regulations, 20710 general provisions and 20711 ballot designation worksheets, section 37 subdivision A1, that there may be a use of mayor pro tem on the ballot. So are we going to challenge what the state of California has on the Secretary of State? I know that when I ran for California Democratic Central Committee, my designation was vice mayor.
Okay, so at this point in time, I'm going to go to legal counsel to distinguish between what the state does and what the city can and cannot do.
My understanding, and I will review the regulation again, Councilmember Aguilar, is that Mayor Pro Tem is not the same as Vice Mayor. Vice Mayor is specific here to San Leandro. So if a particular city has Mayor Pro Tem as a title, then they can't use it. But Vice Mayor is just not in the regulation. So we just go by specifically what the word that the Secretary of State uses versus what we're using. Not necessarily the function. I don't know what a mayor pro tem does, but it's probably similar to what a vice mayor does. I'm just guessing. But in any event, that's because they use the word mayor pro tem. We are taking the position that vice mayor is not the same words as mayor pro tem. And during, let's say somebody runs for Democratic Central Committee, or if they run for East Bay Regional Parks, may they be able to use vice mayor when they run for
office other than city council or mayor.
That's a council decision as to whether they would allow, the council would allow that. But I would recommend it be explicit.
Not seeing, so what about Councilmember Azevedo? Hand up or no? Okay, so then I will proceed with my question. So if I'm understanding this, as crafted, the vice mayor position is an annually rotating position. So I guess it is technically possible that a vice mayor could serve 2 years in a row, but it could well be unlikely as well. But just factually, as you think through the scenarios, Madam Clerk?
That is correct.
Okay.
We don't define term limits for vice mayor.
Okay. And then if someone were describing themselves as vice mayor, that would not necessarily be a title that would represent who they are once they're reelected.
Correct. They would have to be appointed vice mayor.
Again. Okay, thank you. Seeing no other questions, I'd like to go to public comment on the handbook.
Mr. Mayor, we have no public comment in person and only one comment online.
We could go online, please.
Lucas, you may unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you for taking my comment at this late hour in the evening. I wanted to raise a question or maybe propose a hypothesis, a hypothetical scenario about the changes to requests for future agenda items and urgent referrals, which appear on page 14 in attachment B of the draft handbook. And it talks about how all requests shall be made or shall be submitted to the city manager and clerk in writing and in advance of the city council meeting. And I understand that you can override this requirement by, I don't know if it's a majority vote or a supermajority vote, but I want to raise to the council's attention that over the last couple of years, there were a number of very, very contentious city council meetings where a lot of the public attended and expressed very strong feelings and very strong concerns. And I think the council very deftly responded to those by some of the council members in the moment sort of raising either urgent requests to be scheduled or just regular agenda items to be scheduled. And it felt to the audience members during the COVID emergency or the Black Lives Matter emergency, or more recently during the Israel-Palestine conflict emergency, it felt like you guys were listening, because right after public comments were made, you scheduled these agenda items or added things. And I worry that by requiring that all of these requests must be made in advance of a meeting and in writing, that you're going to lose some of this responsiveness to the public. And people will come up, they'll say their thing, and you'll just say, okay, let's move on because we can't schedule anything for a future agenda item because it's not in writing and it's not been done in advance of the city council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, there is no more public comment.
Let's close public comment and come to Councilmember Baloo as we go through the discussion process. But before doing that, I do recognize that it's after 10 p.m. and we do need a motion to extend our time. So I will accept a motion from the floor.
Why I rang in early. Make the motion that we extend our time until 10:30.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second on that motion? Councilmember Viveros Walton.
I second that.
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second. Please vote.
Councilmember Azevedo, your vote, please.
Aye.
All votes are in. Motion passes 7-0 to extend the meeting to 10:30. Councilmember Aguilar, yes. Councilmember Azevedo, yes. Councilmember Baloo, yes. Councilmember Bowen, yes. Councilmember Viveros Walton, yes. Vice Mayor Simon, yes. And Mayor Gonzalez, yes.
Okay, so let's continue with our discussion of the council handbook. Councilmember Blue.
Mr. Mayor, two quick comments. One is on the vice mayor thing. We spent some time in rules. I don't know if everybody heard the meeting or not, trying to list all the things a vice mayor couldn't do or couldn't use their name for. And finally, it was just like, hey, why don't we just put what they can use it for, official city business? Because technically a vice mayor, and maybe to the public, is an elevated status, but to us, it's an honorarium who's someone who says, I'll stand in if the mayor can't make a meeting. Really, that's kind of the limit of vice mayor. So rather than have confusion in the community about it being a title, I don't know a lot about mayor pro tems, but my experience as a mayor pro tem is like when a mayor goes out on a 6-month sabbatical or illness or something, and a mayor is appointed by the council, they become the mayor pro tem. I don't, that's kind of where I'm thinking, and that may be why the designation of the Secretary of State. The other piece is, Kelly, can you put up the slide that talks about our agenda? I want to ask the mayor to consider something. You're in charge of the agenda, and I want to make sure that your meetings are always as efficient as they have been. But I wonder if we can switch number 3 with number 4. Can we do the recognitions before we get a report on closed session? Because often there's families or large groups that come in to be recognized. And I don't know that it's good to make them or have them sit, even though closed session actions taken are always pretty quick. I think it's always good to give them the permission to leave the meeting as soon as possible, especially if it's a school night or they're going out to dinner to celebrate.
So let's just explore that a little bit. In all the meetings that I've watched, the report is literally 1 minute, 30 seconds to 1 minute. And so I agree as a matter of form that it might be useful, but I'm struggling. So I would welcome some thought on that topic.
I know it's only a minute. I don't think it's completely rude to the people that come here to celebrate, but it's not always good news coming out of a closed session. And I don't know that it would create a pall, but I just think when we got, people that are coming for a celebration, why put that out there? And especially, I mean, I do know many people, the wrestling team came here, they had a party after they went out. They left, they went and celebrated. So getting them through, getting them out, and then so they can get home in time for school if it's kids or for work if it's adults. It's small, it's minor. I know it's not a big thing, but I think it's always nice to start with something positive.
So I am certainly open to that, but I'd be curious to hear from others through head nods, thumbs up.
And I'm sorry I didn't think about that in rules. I just sit back.
As did I. I did not think about it. I'm just kind of looking around. I'm looking around down the aisles. Is that fine switching that order to 3, 4? Okay, I think you've got pretty significant consensus in the room. So I think at this point in time, let's, I think you have guidance in that regard.
Thank you.
Council member, are you finished, council member? I will punch through to Vice Mayor Simon, please. You're next.
Yes, two comments. One is from the public commenter. I would agree that at certain times an issue may be raised by the public, and not frequently, but at times it's nice to be able to have that ability to bring an item forward. However, if you have to submit it in writing in advance, you don't have that ability. So that is a concern, that we lose our nimbleness as a council and we become more just confined in what we can do, less effective, I would think. So I would like to see some way to have some more flexibility to be able to bring things forward in the event that something rises to the occasion that's brought up by a member of the public. And my second comment has to deal with the order of the agenda. And this has changed a few times since I've been here, about 3.5 years now. And again, this kind of relates to more interaction with the public. And what I saw when I first joined council is after the public comment, there's very little to say and opportunities to say things, issues of concern. And many times the meeting would go late, similar tonight or even later, and the public would not get to hear a response from the council member on some public comments. So that's why the announcements was moved closer, or issues of concern was moved closer to the public comments. So I'd recommend consideration to move that back up towards public comment so that we could have more interaction with the public and they can hear us more, be more engaged, rather than it really felt like we were robots up here and we just couldn't say anything until the very end and most people had gone home.
For that in particular, just to clarify, what would the recommendation be in terms of the number? And maybe perhaps you could put that back up if you're in a position to do that, Madam Clerk, so that we can kind of see a concrete recommendation.
It looks like 12 was combined. I guess 3 items were combined into 12. So I'd probably pull one of those back out and put up underneath the public comments. I think it was previously announcements.
Public comment is currently item 9 and announcements is item 11. Calendar and announcements.
Okay, so they're pretty close now, but now they're 7 and 12 proposed. So I'd recommend we move announcements back up towards public comment, somewhere near there.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Okay, so let's kind of keep going around and then we can try to crystallize. Councilmember Viveros Walton.
Thank you. I'm going back to the page specific to the where is it? The request for future agenda items and urgent referrals. I think it is for folks following. Oh, there's no page numbers.
Page 14.
Page 14. So we did have a conversation about ensuring that we maintain flexibility for emergencies and things that come up that we just are not able to have time to submit them in writing. However, I think this will help clarify and have a record of all the various requests and ensure that the intent that we of the thing that we are referring or an agenda item, that it is reflected in our own wording, because often folks can have different interpretations of what we're saying. And so this ensures that it is our words in writing submitted. I think it's, for the sake of transparency to the public and accountability to each other, I think we should submit them in writing, and then we can always override it with I believe is a 5-7 vote, right? So we can have a discussion about the urgency of it, and then we can decide to forego that rule, and then we can just verbalize the urgent item that we want to have referred. So thank you.
Councilmember Bowen, your thoughts?
Thank you, Mayor. I actually wanted to talk about the City Council Handbook enforceability and just had a question about it, actually. I think it's the blue page. I think it's page 9. When a written handbook policy memorializes a council or city custom practice, norm, or best practice, the council must develop and pass its own consequences when there are violations. So is this the direction for us to do so going forward?
So clarify, just repeat your question because I'm not quite getting the question.
So it's saying that when we memorialize a city council custom practice or norm, the council must develop and pass its own consequences when there are violations. So we don't have any consequences right now. And once there is a violation, then we will create process.
I get the question. Okay, thank you. So I think that part of what this is saying, and I'll turn to city clerk to confirm I'm understanding this correctly, is that at the present time, we basically have 0 or 100 full volume as a response. Either we do nothing or it's a censure from the council. There's not really any sort of graded response. And I think that at least what I got out of rules is that it's probably a good idea that we have a step function whereby, depending on the nature, the severity, the frequency, the recognition of a mistake, that kind of the standard practices in evaluating consequences, that we would work to develop that. We have not at this time developed that. That's not in this council handbook as it's currently written. So that's my summary of what I think the state of affairs is. I'm getting a head nod.
Yes, that is correct. There is nothing memorialized for what happens if somebody goes against the handbook. So staff is looking to have that language memorialized and then put in the handbook so that everybody understands that these are rules because they are adopted by resolution.
Great, thank you.
And so to be clear, just to follow up on that question, make sure we're on the same page, that by adopting this resolution, we would be referring for further discussion the development of those rules. Is that what the recommendation is?
Yes.
The development of this response to to enforce the rule, shall we say?
Correct. Yes. You can discuss the enforceability tonight, which actions you may choose, or if it's something you want to refer to rules.
So I'm going to go next to Are you finished, Councilmember? Okay, so I'm going to go to Councilmember Aguilar next, please.
Thank you, Mayor Gonzalez. I think we have, rules of decorum to follow with regards to this particular handbook enforceability. And some of us are very passionate about certain issues, and I just don't want to get that misconstrued with somebody violating the city council handbook with regards to what they're advocating for in the community coming forth. I think there have been folks that said that, I should be censured for, suggesting to put forth a community police oversight review board. That's just outrageous. And I think, we've done great in bringing that forth and mitigated our litigation risk in doing so. But, there's some things that get taken out of context with a sense of passion. And I just like to make sure that we take that into consideration when we're trying to enforce what is. And I think that's something that we need to be cognizant about. With regards to the vice mayor, I just think it's silly. And I also think it's discriminatory with somebody who's trying to run for office. I think this is, predates the administration when, the council that I was a part of where, there are certain politics that come into play. I just think that anybody can be vice mayor with regards to whether it's an election or not, and that they can use the title, Secretary of State listed, Vice Mayor Pro Tem, and Vice Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem. It's just the same thing. Mayor Pro Tem's Latin, Vice Mayor's English. So it's it's one and the same. And I think with regards to staff suggestions with travels, there's some times where we're asked to participate in an event a week before. And so take into consideration, if my ticket's going to cost $500, I don't want somebody to say, oh, you know what, 60 days ago, it would have been 140, but because you got, notified within a week before, you're going to be chastised and penalized because you want to participate in an event somewhere in Southern California, what have you. I just want to make sure that we're clear about that. That we don't do that, because I think this can be taken out of context, and make sure we have language that protects us from events such as. And with regards to the council agenda, I think item 7 should be brought up right after recognitions. So I think
Could you pause for a second just so that I can see it on, you can pop it up on the screen, please.
IT, can you share my screen?
so. Public comment is item 7. I think we should move it up to after recognitions, which would be item 5, and then renumber from below. But those are just my thoughts.
Okay, so you are requesting that 7, and I'm going to use kind of funky terminology, but 7 would be 4A, would come after 4.
Yes.
Other thoughts at this time? No, okay. So at this point, I go to Councilmember Blue.
I'll be brief. I respectfully disagree with my colleague on the 7 coming before 6. I think sometimes the city manager does a report and then our public commenters comment on that. It's not on the agenda that she's reporting on, but there are times when our public commenters do have a comment to say about the report from her or the city attorney. So I think it's good that those come first and then people have a chance to comment. That's just my own view. And then the other thing I was going to say is I agree and support that 5 out of 7 supermajority for a priority item. Anything that we're going to tell staff, stop doing everything you're doing and work on this, should probably be a 5/7, but it does give us the flexibility if something does come up. I will say from my experience of 7 years, often when we start legislating from the dais, it's an emotional topic that could use a pause, a break, a de-escalation in police language, which we're also fond of, to just get all the stakeholders kind of involved and check in with all sides so that we don't make rash decisions. But if it is that thing that's so important that we all think we need to tell staff, stop, push the button, keep doing nothing else but this, 5/7 vote's going to be pretty easy to get. I can't even think of a situation. I'm sure there are some, but I am supportive of that 5/7 so that we can manage staff's time wisely and also put what the public, and when we say the public, we have to be careful not to talk about the margins, the activists. I mean, I'm talking about the 89.9. If there's something out there that we need to do something about it, it's an emergency, I think we'll get 5/7's vote. And I think we'll have something written up to submit to the city manager or whomever for that priority. I've seen the process of priority abused over and over. And I don't know that that's the fairest way to help staff get done what we'd like to do personally. I've also seen our city manager do a great job managing the resources and and with the help of our assistant city manager, managing the expectations of the council. I think that 5/7 is a really good balance point for really discerning what needs to be done right now and what can be just done as a regular referral. Those are my comments, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Fully recognizing that we will probably not end in the next 6.5 minutes. And entertain a motion to move our time for closure from 10:30 until some other time that one of you is bold enough to pick.
I would say 11 o'clock, and that's final for me.
Okay. So does anybody second the 11 o'clock? Okay, so what I'm going to do, I haven't gone yet. Everyone's gone at least once. Councilmember Azevedo does he have a hand up? I just want to make sure that he gets a chance. No? Okay. So then I'm just going to go quickly because I'm going to try to summarize where I think we are on various things. So we've got the staff recommendations, and then I have summarized that when we think about developing some sort of enforcement matrix, that we need to be sensitive to things like passion and intensity of feeling and making sure that that doesn't get swept up with word policing and things like that, that we want to be sensitive to good code of conduct and finding ways to remind people about the commitments that we have here, right? Council commitments, we're going to be genuine with each other, et cetera, and how we're going to treat each other with respect and not confuse passion for hate or things like that. And so I think that that would be part of the guidance of when we resolve and move things back to rules for the development of those procedures. In terms of, there's also a question about travel reimbursement that was raised by a council member, and that there be some sensitivity to that. But I think there's also probably the recognition that we do have budgets, and so we can't take too many trips at the last minute. In terms of moving items, that top half of our agenda has repeatedly moved very quickly. And I'm particularly sensitive to employer of choice issues because we've been working with staff, because a lot of people that hang around to wait to hear whether their item's going to get pulled off of consent or something like that. And almost always, because we've already discussed the items at rules or at finance or at transportation, blah, 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 we know that these are fine. And so we respect each other through the committee work that we've done. And so that tends to be very quick. Now, it didn't used to be that way. I remember we used to pull 4, 5, 6, 7 items off of consent. But now we've been really good about asking our questions to city manager beforehand. And so I'd really like to, if we can, stay true to that commitment that we're going to depend on council, and we're not going to adjust the schedule to put public comment before staff on consent, just so that if they don't need to stay, they can go. Because we currently have a process where we're limiting it to the first 30 minutes. But the truth of the matter is, depending on the issue, depending on the circumstances, that might change. We might give people an hour, see if we can kind of get the issues addressed in the room. I think the only other question that I heard with respect to our current agenda, and by the way, there was a question of 3 versus 4. Did you want to share any kind of best practices about why we would do? I mean, I don't know that it's that big a deal, but
The order that the clerk has prepared as a recommendation actually involves some research on best practices, and there's a reason why that report out of closed session typically is at the very beginning. While you all have not experienced this, there's a reason we have public comment right before closed session. That's required by law. And so I've had experiences where people actually show up for the closed session item, and then they come to the open session because they're simply waiting for the report out on that item. So that was the reason behind the original ordering. I'm just letting you know it wasn't, if you ask the Clerks Association, they would tell you that's the way you should follow.
so I'm going to look down the row here, 'cause again, being cognizant of 10:30, do you have strong feelings one way or the other about switching 3 and 4? Okay, then I would recommend that we go with the clerk's recommendation, just out of respect for the research that she's done, if you're fine with that. So then that just leaves us in terms of the last item is the use of the vice mayor title. I don't think I've talked about that yet. So, to get to that, we may need to just have a straight up vote if we want to amend what's written in her recommendation. Because I think everything else we're pretty much agreeing on through head nods. And so I think that the resolution would be to adopt what the city clerk has recommended, right? But we've got this question about vice mayor. So I'd like to carve that out specifically, just so that we can get it all done. So looking down the row, do we have a problem carving out that question specifically? Okay, I see no opposition to carving that out specifically. So what I'd like to do, again, given the hour and that we can't extend by virtue of the face signals that I'm getting. So what I'd like to do is take a vote on the approval of the recommendation from the city clerk on everything except the specific paragraph dealing with the use of the title vice mayor. I think we have consensus around that. Councilmember Simon, please, or Vice Mayor Simon, my apologies.
Yes, on the agenda order, as far as moving announcements up closer to the public comments, did we address that?
We have not addressed that. I'm going to just look down the row and see what the feeling is on that. And give me some head nods. I'm just trying to move us along here. I'm not getting excitement to move that, so I'm going to stay with a clerk's recommendation. But I do think that there's a more extensive discussion around the vice mayor title. I think there's going to be some healthy debate there. And so I'm going to go ahead and say my motion is to move forward with appropriate resolution with the exception of the use of the title of vice mayor. And that will come back to the council for further discussion.
Have one more clarification, Mayor?
Certainly.
Sorry to drag this. Back to the bringing up items, item 14s without having it in writing. At the actual text that I'm looking at, is it defined in the text that with a supermajority, you can bring it forward without having it in writing? I thought that you just had to have it in writing no matter what. Would I?
Yeah, so I think just to not to interrupt, my apologies, but to clarify, I think pretty much we can suspend any rule with a 5/7. So if we want to, we can say we're just suspending that rule. Because I think the sensitivity is that there could be a crisis that has emerged where we need to deal with it immediately. And we have that, it wouldn't even require unanimity, right? Because there could be some people that are just, well, I don't believe that this is a real issue, right? But chances are, if it's a real crisis, we're all going to agree that it's a crisis. So back to, I've got, sorry. So I'm going to go to Councilmember Balloon next.
I second your motion.
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second. Is there further discussion at this time on this particular item? Okay, let's vote.
Councilmember Azevedo, your vote?
Aye.
All votes are in. Motion passes 7-0. Councilmember Aguilar, yes. Councilmember Azevedo, yes. Councilmember Baloo, yes. Councilmember Bowen, yes. Councilmember Viveras Walton, yes. Vice Mayor Simon, yes. And Mayor Gonzalez, yes.
Really, as a matter of courtesy, is there anything that anybody has to report for reimbursement purposes? Because I know that sometimes people feel pressured on their finances. Because if there's not, we can get the reimbursement later. Okay, seeing nothing in queue, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn us and we can pick up items 14 and 15 next time in their regular spot, unless anyone is opposed to that. So on our June 3rd agenda, we will pick up items 14 and 15 at the location of 14 and 15. We won't start a separate meeting at the top. We're just going to table those for today. Okay, perfect. Thank you. One more thing, please.
one more question.
Vice Mayor.
As far as the vice mayor item, will we be bringing that back on June 3rd to finish that up?
That would be my preference.
Okay.
That would be my preference. Do I see any opposition to that? Okay, so I don't think we're not, okay, perfect. So